Chapter 943. Speak, Mo Tianxian said. Suyu glanced at Deputy Region Master Xiao. May I ask, Deputy Region Master Xiao, is this a challenge between factions or between individuals? Deputy Region Master Xiao looked at Suyu and chuckled. I guess this must be the world-renowned Master Su. This challenge is not only between factions, but also between individuals. Master, do you have any questions? Since it's a personal challenge, it's boring if we don't bet on the outcome, Suyu said. Deputy Region Master Xiao said, How would you like to bet on, Master Su? Suyu's eyes flashed. I've heard that the Heavenly Knife region is rich in resources. I'd like to ask for a special cultivation technique that can be used with the treasures and the beads. A bead type of treasure? Everyone was stunned. People who used such treasures were rare. The corresponding cultivation techniques were even rarer. Deputy Region Master Xiao frowned slightly. I'm sorry, the Heavenly Knife region does have a few treasures, but I haven't read them, so I can't repeat the contents. Is that so? Suyu's eyes were filled with disappointment. Isn't it easy to get such a cultivation technique? I have it. A sharp voice floated over. It was the Jade-Clothed Man. A piece of jade on his body emitted a green light and flew toward Suyu. Suyu grabbed it in the air, looked at the Jade-Clothed Man for a moment, and probed it with a trace of soul energy. The top-grade legendary cultivation technique, Meteor Light Stream Formation. Suyu's eyes were filled with surprise. He had used a top-grade legendary cultivation technique. Although such cultivation techniques were not strictly offensive cultivation techniques, and were not as valuable as top-grade legendary cultivation techniques, they were rare, and ordinary people could not find them. This man had one with him, which showed that his identity was extraordinary. The Meteor Light Stream Formation was a powerful formation that used 9 beads to form a large formation to destroy the enemy. The power of the formation depended on the number of beads and the strength of the beads. If the beads were all top-grade spiritual artifacts, the 9 beads could seal the enemy, and they would be attacked by 9 beads in succession. The power was comparable to a blow from 7th grade Almighty, which was very powerful. An offensive formation. However, the disadvantage of this cultivation technique was that it consumed a lot of soul energy. It was very strenuous for a 6th grade Almighty to activate the entire formation. Usually, they could only use it once before they felt tired and dizzy. If it wasn't necessary, no one would use it. Suyu's eyes lit up. His 3rd grade Almighty Soul really couldn't support 9 round pearls to unleash the Great Formation, but 5 pearls wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, he only needed the Underworld Pearl to be effective among the 5 of them. Even an all-creation's old monster would lose a layer of skin after being hit by the Underworld Pearl, let alone an almighty divine master. There was only a name and a brief introduction on the Jade Slip, nothing else. Suyu's eyes flickered. What do you want? If I win, I only want one thing, 10 drops of your essence blood, said the Jade-Clothed Man. Suyu frowned. For practitioners, apart from containing life energy, essence blood often had many other mysterious uses. For example, it could be made into a life plate to determine whether or not it was dead. He resisted the urge to refine some Dharma treasures and talismans. In fact, it could even cause long-range damage to the owner of the blood essence. Mo Tianxian squinted her eyes and stared at Suyu. You have to think this through carefully. I know some strange secret techniques. A drop of blood essence can control a person from thousands of miles away. Giving one's essence blood to an outsider was a huge taboo in cultivation. Having been reminded by Mo Tianxian, Suyu pondered for a moment and nodded lightly. All right, how do we start the competition? The Jade-Clothed Man laughed. Haha, straightforward. The competition is very simple. The winner will be decided in half a cup of tea's time. As he spoke, 2 wooden tablets appeared in the Jade-Clothed Man's palms, emitting a shocking wood-based scent. Suyu had only encountered such a rich scent in the ancient tongue forest. The wooden tablets were made of a very precious type of wood, containing a shocking amount of vitality. They were only slightly weaker than the 3 drops of the Fountain of Life that Suyu had obtained. Mo Tianxuan's eyes shone. Essence wood of all creations, stage 7. The so-called essence wood was extracted from the core material of the Mu people's torso, where the Mu people's essence was. Usually, it could only be extracted when one was alive to retain the essence. After death, the essence would dissipate. In Jeojo, this item was something that could only be encountered by chance, because the Mu people of Jeojo were as rare as phoenix feathers and water chestnuts. Moreover, they had cultivated to stage 7 all creations, which was close to the mortal fairy level. Apart from the 9 great prefectures' kings, the severed fairy cliff was the most likely to possess this item, and he had 2 of them. The Mu words are different from those of the human race, which are learned at a young age, familiarized, and finally mastered. Once the Mu people reach adulthood and gain spiritual intelligence, they will automatically open up their inherited memories and obtain all the wood words. The memory of the Mu words. The essence wood contains the memories of the Mu people. As long as one instills his own memory of the Mu words into the essence wood will respond. The more one can overlap with the essence wood's memory, the more it will resonate with the essence wood, and the appearance of annual rings will be able to determine which of us has a broader and more accurate memory of the Mu words. Suyu stared at the essence wood. He could confirm that the inheritance of the Mu people's memory was true. In other words, the memory preserved by this essence would covered all the Mu words. Suyu only needed to instill the Mu words that he had learned into the essence wood, and the essence would respond. According to the strength of the response, annual rings would appear on the essence wood. The number of annual rings would directly reflect the gap between the 2 parties. Suyu's pupils shone brightly, and he nodded slightly. Let's begin. The jade-clothed man stepped forward and placed his palm on the essence wood. He slowly closed his eyes and silently recalled the Mu words in his memory. Before long, the essence wood began to tremble slightly like a fish, and a circle of annual rings appeared in the center of the essence wood. Suyu stepped forward calmly and placed his palm on it as well, recalling the Mu words in his memory. Before long, the essence wood began to tremble slightly, and an annual ring appeared. As the competition began, both Deputy Region Master Xiao and Mo Tianxian began to pay attention. Sister Wuxin, who do you think is more powerful? Gongsun Wuxia stared at Suyu and asked with a faint smile. Bing Wuxin said, I can't tell at the moment, but there is a 90% chance that Suyu will lose. Why are you so sure? Gongsun Wuxia did not think much of it. In her mind, Suyu is the ruthless demonic man who shocked the continent. How could such a powerful existence lose so easily, even if it was in the realm of words? Bing Wuxin said, It's very simple. The other party came prepared. He even dared to make a bet of 100 million crystals, so he must be fully prepared. In the competition between the 2 sides, the fairest part was the same essence wood, and the most unfair part is also the same 2 sets of essence wood. Gongsun Wuxia was quick-witted and immediately understood. She blinked her big eyes. Sister Wuxin, you mean that there is something wrong with Brother Yushin's essence wood? The most unfair part was that the essence wood was prepared by the challenger. Whether there was a problem or not, only they would know. Bing Wuxin nodded lightly and immediately looked at Mo Tianxian. Yes, let's see what our palace master Mo will do. Both sides patiently instilled their memories, and the intensity of their essence wood's reaction was about the same. Seeing that they were about to enter a stalemate, Mo Tianxian suddenly said, Exchange the essence wood, and the competition continues. Her voice contained some kind of great power, and the 2 who were trying hard to recall were disrupted at the same time. Deputy Region Master Xiao frowned. Palace Master Mo, this is not good, is it? Mo Tianxian said indifferently. This is good. You brought the essence wood, so you know very well whether there is a problem with the 2 sets of essence wood. During the competition just now, this master of yours did not give us any opportunity to choose any essence wood. If you have the chance to choose the essence wood, just choose one and start. Of course, I have reason to suspect that there are differences between the 2. In addition, if there is any difference between the 2 sets of essence wood that will affect the competition during the competition, the challenge will be stopped on the spot, Mo Tianxian announced without any hesitation. Although Deputy Region Master Xiao was reluctant, he nodded. Don't worry, there is no problem with the essence wood. Next, both sides exchanged essence wood. Such a small interlude ensured that the competition was fair. The competition resumed, and the annual rings on both sets of essence wood grew steadily. Mo Tianxian watched quietly. The benefits of this battle were secondary. 100 million crystals and 500 shops were shocking, but the most important thing was their reputation. If the Heavenly Knife region lost like this, the Red Blood Palace would become a laughingstock. In the blessed and heavenly lands where chaos was gradually rising, any incident that would damage the faction's image had to be paid close attention. Moreover, Tinya City was located at the border of both sides, and it was a place that the military would fight for. It was not easy to drive them out with the sacrifice. If they occupied another part of it, it would be even more difficult to drive them out again. Both sides' annual rings were growing at the same rate. Suyu was multitasking. When he caught a glimpse of his opponent's annual rings, he was secretly shocked. The faster the annual rings grew, the faster and more accurate his recall speed was, and the more words there were. So far, Suyu had recalled more than half of his Mu words, and his opponent could still keep up with his rhythm. 3/4 of the time had passed, and both sides had reached the final stage. Suyu had recalled all the simple and easy-to-remember Mu words, and all that was left was the ancient words. To Suyu's surprise, his opponent's speed was still almost the same as his. There was dead silence in the main hall, and no one dared to breathe as they stared at the changing annual rings of both sides. They could all see that both sides were evenly matched. Deputy Region Master Zhao's face was solemn, and he was extremely surprised. According to the jade-clothed man, there was no one in the Jiuzhou continent who understood Mu words better than him. However, Suyu was not at a disadvantage, and he was even slightly ahead. Both sides had reached 60 annual rings. Finally, half a cup of tea's time had passed. Suyu had recalled all the Mu words in his memory, and there were a total of 66 thick annual rings. However, Suyu's face fell when his opponent's annual rings continued to grow. This did not make sense. The speed of both sides' memories was almost the same. There should not have been a situation where Suyu had finished recalling while his opponent's momentum did not slow down. The scene made the faces of those who did not know the truth change abruptly. Suyu is no match for him. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. Mo Tianxuan's face fell. If her opponent was obviously cheating, she could declare the duel invalid. However, it turned out that her own people were not good enough. The group of inner sanctum elders felt as if the sky had collapsed, and their faces were gloomy and unpleasant. Oh no, the Heavenly Knife region had re-entered Tinya City, and their reputation had been completely destroyed. It was equivalent to being slapped in the face. They had used Mu words to seize the shops of the Heavenly Knife region, but the Heavenly Knife region had used the same method to take them back. Such a deliberate way of humiliating them made their faces fall. Palace Master, the duel is fake. He has finished recalling all the Mu words. What he is recalling now is not Mu words at all, but other memories that can resonate with essence wood. Suyu said. He cupped his fists. Hearing this, everyone suddenly understood. There was a problem. There's no problem with the essence wood, but there was a problem with the person. The jade-clothed man must have had more memories of resonating with essence wood, which he used to imitate Mu words. Perhaps the jade-clothed man had never thought that there would be someone who had comprehended all the Mu words, forcing him to confuse other memories after he had finished memorizing the words and add more growth rings. Mo Tianxuan's brows relaxed, and she looked at Deputy Region Master Xiao coldly. Do you want me to stop it? What she meant was that the duel was fake and should be declared invalid. However, Deputy Region Master Zhao's expression was calm, as if he had long been prepared for this. He smiled faintly and said, Palace Master Mo, we made it very clear. The competition is to see who can cause more essence wood to resonate. We have a broader and deeper understanding of the Mu words. We didn't say that one must resonate with Mu words. That was only part of it. Hearing this, everyone was furious. The dignified heavenly knife region is playing with words. Don't you think it's shameless? Master Ghost scolded sternly. They had thought it was a duel of moo words, but the heavenly knife region had changed the concept to a duel of resonating with essence with memories. The two were worlds apart. What? The dignified red blood palace can't afford to lose? Deputy Region Master Xiao said. Firstly, I didn't cheat, and secondly, I didn't deceive you. You didn't hear the rules clearly, and you blame us? Also, aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock? The crowd was enraged, and they were filled with righteous indignation. Mo Tianxian waved her hand, signaling for everyone to be quiet. Her expression was no better than the elders, and there was a cold gleam in the depths of her eyes. If she went back on her words and declared the duel invalid, the Red Blood Palace's reputation would be gone. If she didn't go back on her words and admitted defeat, the Red Blood Palace would lose all face. No matter what the outcome was, the Red Blood Palace would lose the duel and the people. The consequences were very serious. If they were to compare rationally, the latter was more rational than the former. Lost face could be regained, and lost shops could be snatched again. If they lost their reputation, the Red Blood Palace would have difficulty moving forward, and their influence in the blessed and heavenly lands would plummet. The loss was not something that could be compared to losing 500 shops. Therefore, if she had to choose, Mo Tianxian would choose the latter and admit defeat. Understanding the palace master's decision, the elders were furious. Shameless. The elders were furious, but also sorrowful. A moment of carelessness had resulted in such a heavy loss. Deputy Region Master Xiao smiled faintly. Haha, calm down, everyone. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. After suffering a small loss this time, you can avoid suffering a big loss in the future. Why not? Hearing his gloating words, the crowd was even more furious. However, the more furious they were, the more mockery and contempt in Deputy Region Master Zhao's eyes became. Deputy Region Master Xiao, what you mean is as long as the essence can resonate, any means will do, right? So you asked. Deputy Region Master Xiao thought for a moment, then said cautiously, only using your memory to trigger the resonance. Any other means will be considered a violation of the rules. So you nodded lightly. Fine. If that's the case, I'll continue. I hope you won't regret it too much. In terms of Mu-related memories, so you had the distant memories of the desolate, evil jungle and the tree goddess. More recently, he had the Book of First Heavens, which had primitive Mu words on it. It was the beginning of Mu words. Both of these memories were extremely strong memories for the Mu people. It was hard to predict how strong the resonance would be. Deputy Region Master Zhao's heart skipped a beat. Staring at Suyu's calm face, he had a bad feeling. Suyu placed his hands on the essence wood again and said calmly, Continue. Chapter 944. The annual rings on Suyu's essence would increased explosively. 66 annual rings, reaching a total of 70, quickly catching up with the jade-clothed man. The two were tied again. The difference was that the growth of Suyu's essence wood's annual rings was several times faster than the jade-clothed man's. Suyu's essence would seem to be greatly stimulated, resonating with the remnant memories in the essence wood. Deputy Region Master Zhao's facial muscles stiffened, and even his eyes looked dull. After a while, he recovered and said coldly, He is cheating. Humph! A cold snort fell into Deputy Region Master Zhao's ears. His whole body shook as if he had been electrocuted. Blood spilled from the corners of his mouth as he looked at Mo Tianxian. Mo Tianxian sneered. Just because you have a mouth doesn't mean you could talk nonsense. It was obvious that the Heavenly Knife region had cheated first, and when they found out things were beyond their expectations, they accused the Red Blood Palace of cheating. Mo Tianxian, who had been suppressing her anger for a long time, could not be polite. After being taught a lesson by Mo Tianxian, Deputy Region Master Xiao kept his mouth shut and focused his eyes on Suyu and the jade-clothed man again. His relaxed expression disappeared, replaced by anxiety. An accident had occurred in the gambling game that was almost certain to be won. The jade-clothed man split a bit of his attention to check on Su Yu's movements and was shocked. Who are you? Only someone who had a close relationship with the Mu race could master the entire set of Mu words and resonate with the essence wood. How'd Su Yu do it? Su Yu did not respond, but resonated silently. After a while, the annual rings on Su Yu's essence would reach 90. The jade-clothed man only had 85. The speed of the annual rings on both sides gradually slowed down and came to a stop. The challenge was about to come to an end, and the winner was obvious. It's not over yet. The jade-clothed man snorted coldly, and the many jade pieces on the surface of his body suddenly burst into bright light. The gradually stagnating annual rings suddenly increased from 85 to 98 in the blink of an eye, and it was still growing. On the other hand, Su Yu seemed to be exhausted and gradually stopped. Seeing this, Deputy Region Master Xiao relaxed a lot and breathed a sigh of relief. The faces of the Red Blood Palace became gloomy again. What happened? Why did the essence wood in his hand suddenly increase? All the elders were shocked. Palace Mistress Emon narrowed her eyes. The situation was getting worse and worse. Deputy Region Master Xiao smiled faintly and said, "It's impossible for you to defeat him." Mo Tianxian thought for a moment and snorted softly. She waved her sleeves and released a strong force. The jade clothes on the jade-clothed man's body were blown off silently, revealing his true body. All the elders looked over and were shocked. He's not human. The person before him had the appearance of a human, but his facial features were stiff and lifeless. His face was filled with wooden patterns. How was this a human? It was clearly the wood tribe. Moreover, from the wood attribute aura it emitted, it was of the same origin as essence wood. It was very likely that this wood clan member had a close connection with essence wood, so they shared a lot of memories. Is the Heavenly Knife region toying with us? Mo Tianxuan's face was gloomy. What kind of joke was this? Who could cause the essence wood's memories to resonate better than a member of the wood race, and a member of the wood race who had the same origin as essence wood? From the very beginning, there was no chance of winning this duel. No wonder he had to wear a mysterious jade robe to conceal his aura. Who wouldn't be enraged after understanding all this? Deputy Region Master Zhao's face changed and stiffened for a moment. He forced himself to calm down and said, "Palace Master Mo, before the duel began, there was no rule that forbade members of the same race as Essence would from participating. How could the Heavenly Knife region be toying with you? I hope Palace Master Mo won't talk nonsense and bring shame to the reputation of the Heavenly Knife region." This sentence was a quote from Mo Tianxian, and it was full of sarcasm. Mo Tianxuan's eyes were filled with murderous intent, but she forced herself to hold it in. Indeed, they had been careless. They hadn't thought that the Heavenly Knife region would find a Wood Clan member. The Wood Clan's presence in Jiuzhou was limited to the desolate, evil jungle. However, the Wood Clan in the desolate, evil jungle had never stepped out for thousands of years, and it was impossible for them to join in the disputes of Jiuzhou's human race. Due to their carelessness, the Heavenly Knife region had found a mysterious Wood Clan member. Mo Tianxian looked at Su Yu and sighed silently. Su Yu tried his best. In the end, he used a mysterious method to increase the number of annual rings and expose the special identity of the jade-clothed man. No matter who won or lost, he couldn't be blamed. The rest of the elders looked at Su Yu with understanding. In this world, who could compete with the Wood Clan's culture? No, to be precise, Su Yu's mastery of the Wood Clan's language was slightly better than this Wood Clan members. It was just that the other party had cheated and limited the way of the duel. Su Yu was defeated, but not humiliated. It was a pity that the favorable situation had deteriorated again. Su Yu stared at the lineup of the jade-clothed man with suspicion. This person wasn't an ancient bronze tree man. Could there be other kinds of Wood Clan people in the Jiuzhou continent? Where did they come from? But there was no time to think about it now. The Wood Clan used essence wood from their own race to compete with Su Yu, an outsider, to see who could resonate more. Even with the two great memories, it was far from enough to compete. I can only try the Book of First Heavens. If I can comprehend it further and condense the most primitive character, I might have a chance of winning, Suyu thought to himself. That character had produced millions of Wood Clan languages, created the Wood Clan culture, and gave birth to the Wood Clan civilization. According to the characteristics of the Wood Clan, this inheritance was completed through the bloodline. No memory could be compared to the inherited memory. The memory of the Jade-Clothed Man was at most related to the former owner of the Essence Wood, but it couldn't be compared to the inherited memory. As long as he could comprehend it, even if it was just a trace, he could trigger the inherited memory in the bloodline of the Essence Wood. With a thought, Suyu calmed down and began to recall the book of First Heavens that he had read. Between heaven and earth, birth, aging, sickness, and death, reincarnation and destiny, all kinds of profound meanings of heaven and earth slid through the depths of Suyu's mind like flowing water. The profound meaning of time, space, and soul. When the three kinds of profound meanings appeared, they resonated with Suyu, and he felt a sense of intimacy. It was as if there were three kinds of weak heavenly law, profound meanings existing in Suyu's body. Gradually, Suyu had an illusion that he was a part of the shapeless heavenly law. The feeling of integration was like when a baby was born. In the eyes of outsiders, Suyu closed his eyes and fell into meditation. But in Suyu's eyes, he was one with heaven and earth. All of a sudden, Mo Tianxian seemed to sense something and stared at Suyu. From the outside, Suyu didn't seem to have changed, but she could tell that Suyu had undergone an indescribable transformation from the inside out. It was as if Suyu's body had integrated with something. For a long time, Suyu was still immersed in the heavenly law profound meaning of the Book of First Heavens. During this period of time, the Mu people had resonated with a total of 130 annual rings. The gap between them had widened, and in the eyes of outsiders, it was impossible to catch up. Palace Master Mo, can you announce the end of the competition? Deputy Region Master Xiao said with a smile. He heaved a long sigh of relief and glanced at Suyu, whose annual rings had stopped growing for a long time. He had thought that Suyu was just a human who was proficient in Mu words. He didn't expect that he had other means to trigger resonance. Fortunately, he had been prepared. Otherwise, the Heavenly Knife region would lose 100 million and become a laughingstock. Mo Tianxian stared at Suyu and shook her head. Both sides have stopped. Suyu is still trying. The competition isn't over yet. Deputy Region Master Xiao looked at Suyu and shrugged indifferently. What he meant was there any point in continuing? After such a long time, if Suyu really had a way, he would have triggered resonance with the Essence Wood long ago. Right at that moment, Suyu suddenly opened his eyes. There was a ripple in his black and white eyes. Coincidentally, Mo Tianquan's eyes met with this pair of eyes. In an instant, Mo Tianquan's body shook violently. In those eyes, Mo Tianxian seemed to see a galaxy of the universe swirling in Suyu's eyes. Many mysterious profoundness filled his eyes. From those eyes, Mo Tianxian vaguely touched upon a whole new world. However, this sense of touch quickly disappeared as Suyu's eyes returned to normal. At that moment, Mo Tianxian couldn't recall the mysterious world she had just felt. It was as if some invisible force was keeping her out of this world. This feeling of confusion filled Mo Tianxian with surprise and doubt. Staring at Suyu, Mo Tianquan's eyes were filled with curiosity. But soon, her attention was quickly drawn away. Swish! The Essence Wood in front of Suyu, whose annual rings had stopped growing for a long time, suddenly began to tremble. Like a big fish that had come back to life, it shook violently and leaped from the ground into the air, as if it had become a living creature. Mo Tianxian and the Jade-Clothed Man of the Mu clan were shocked by such a peculiar scene. What have you done? At that moment, the Essence Wood was not only throbbing violently, but drops of crystal-clear liquid emerged from within the Essence Wood. It contained an extremely rich breath of life. Taking a breath of it was refreshing, and one's lifespan was slightly increased. Gongsun Wuxia's nose twitched as she said in surprise, It's the fountain of life. Only the divine master of the Mu clan and above could produce the spiritual liquid, which was the life essence of the Mu clan. This item could only be produced by the Mu clan willingly. It could not be obtained by external force. The Mu clan's pupils shrank. What had happened? The essence could even produce the fountain of life on its own. Then, a scene that shocked both the Mu clan and me happened. The annual rings of the essence would begin to grow again. However, it wasn't growing one by one, but 10 by 10. From 90 just now, it quickly grew to 100, and it quickly caught up with the jade-clothed man. The jade-clothed man's face changed drastically. His palm that had left the essence would quickly attach itself to it, and it began to resonate again. His stiff face was anthropomorphic, revealing a panicked expression. However, he had used up most of the resonance memory, and the growth of the annual rings was very slow. After 3 breaths, Suyu easily overtook him. After 10 breaths, when Suyu had reached 150 annual rings, the Mu clan only had 140, and the rate of growth was almost stagnant. After another 10 breaths, Suyu had reached 160 annual rings, but the Mu clan had completely stagnated. The competition had come to an end. What did you do? The Mu clan's man stared at Suyu, unable to believe the essence wood in Suyu's palm. It was no longer a piece of essence wood, but a strange object that was glowing all over, surging with a fountain of life. In this piece of essence wood, the Mu clan's man could even feel a breath of their race's bloodline that was rooted in them. The memory of the bloodline inheritance. The Mu clan's pupils shrank as he said in shock. Suyu opened his eyes slowly, but did not stop immediately. He only withdrew his palm when the annual rings of the essence wood could no longer grow. Patter! The essence wood fell silently, and Suyu grasped it in his palm. Suyu did not leave a single drop of the surging fountain of life. He removed all of it and placed it in a jade bottle. The essence would have the soul energy of an all creations when it was alive. Although the fountain of life was far less precious than the Inmu, it was still a rare spiritual object in the world. Every drop could prolong one's life by dozens of years. There were at least 20 or 30 drops in the entire jade bottle, which was extremely valuable. Any drop could be exchanged for 1,000,000 crystals. Suyu nodded as he put it away. The attempt was indeed worth it. After comprehending the book of First Heavens, the 10,000 most primitive words in the world gradually took shape in Suyu's mind. The 1,000,000 Mu clan words that he had mastered were reduced to 500,000. They were gradually flowing back to the most primitive Mu words, as if they were returning to the most primitive Mu words. It was this returning that triggered the resonance of the memory of the essence wood's bloodline inheritance, and even the fountain of life overflowed on its own just now. I'm asking you a question. What did you do? The Mu clan's man stared at Suyu and questioned him. There was an inexplicable surprise in his tone. Suyu glanced at him calmly. Do I have to answer just because you ask? Suyu withdrew his gaze and said, Palace Master Imo, the competition is over. Palace Master Imo, please make a decision as soon as possible. The reminder caused Palace Master Imo and the other elders to wake up from their days. The elders still had blank looks on their faces, and they didn't even have time to show their joy. What was supposed to be a simple competition had been full of twists and turns. In the end, Suyu had used his mysterious trump card and crushed the Mu clan's man, who couldn't possibly win. It made them feel like they were in a dream. Palace Master Mo's cold face showed a look of approval. Suyu, well done. You have done me a great service. She was in a good mood, and even Suyu seemed more pleasing to the eye. Deputy Region Master Xiao, hand over the crystals and the promised cultivation techniques to me for inspection. After that, you can leave. I won't be seeing you out. Deputy Region Master Zhao's face was as gloomy as the dark clouds in the sky. It looked like water was about to drip out. He had been defeated. It was an unbelievable defeat. A human could resonate with the essence with even more than the Mu clan. He couldn't accept it no matter what. However, the competition was under the watchful eyes of everyone. There was no possibility of cheating. On the contrary, if they insisted on cheating, they would be more suspicious. His heart was heavy. When he returned to the Heavenly Knife region, he would definitely anger the region master. Not to mention losing 100 million crystals, the influence of Tianya City would be completely wiped out. More importantly, he would be humiliated. Not only had he failed to humiliate them, but he had been humiliated instead. Not only the blessed and heavenly lands, but the other regions of the central prefecture would also mock him. Gritting his teeth secretly, Deputy Region Master Xiao took out a space ring and took the jade piece containing the cultivation techniques from the Mu clan's hand. He handed it to Mo Tianxian with an ugly look. Mo Tianxian glanced at it to confirm the number of crystals and the authenticity of the cultivation techniques. She nodded slightly. Not bad. You can leave now. If you want to stay for a few more days, the Red Blood Palace will treat you with courtesy. If you want to leave, we won't hold you back. How could Deputy Region Master Xiao still have the mood to stay? He cupped his fists. Farewell. Chapter 945. Only after the two of them left did the elders reveal relieved expressions. Master Su, you've made contributions to the Red Blood Palace again. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Master Go stepped forward and cupped his fists. The other elders of the inner sanctum looked at Su Yu in a different light. Judging from his performance just now, he could no longer be regarded as an amazingly talented disciple. In terms of contribution, he was by no means inferior to the elders present. Master Ghost, you flatter me. I was just lucky for a moment. I can't be compared to a pillar of the faction like Master Ghost, Su Yu said modestly. Master Ghost just shook his head and smiled. Mo Tianxian rubbed the jade slip in her palm and threw it to Su Yu. You did well. I'll look forward to your continued performance. After that, she waved her hand to dismiss the meeting. She tore the space apart and strode away. Su Yu didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Mo Tianxian seemed to have glanced at him. That glance made Su Yu vigilant. Wow, Brother Yuxian, you're amazing. Gongsun Wuxia ran over, her eyes filled with stars. Among all the people present, she was the one who was least worried about the outcome, as she knew Su Yu's true identity. After all, how could such a great person lose such a small competition? Bing Wuxin walked over, her eyes deep in thought. For a moment, you seem to have touched the door to another world. I've only felt such a feeling for my mother. I don't understand what you're talking about. Su Yu pretended to be confused, but he was very surprised. Bing Wuxin's mother also had such an aura. Who was she? Gongsun Wuxia said, Brother Yuxian, you're in the limelight again today. The so-called geniuses of the inner sanctum are about to be overshadowed by you. Su Yu smiled and looked at Gongsun Wuxia. After thinking for a moment, he took out the jade bottle and extracted a drop of the fountain of life from it. Try it first and see if it works for you. Gongsun Wuxia and Fairy Ling had entered the desolate, evil jungle together in search of the fountain of life to wash away the medicinal power of the divine herb that she had mistakenly consumed. Gongsun Wuxia's eyes lit up. She took it and flashed a bright and dazzling smile. She was slightly excited, like a child who had eaten honey. I won't stand on ceremony. Gongsun Wuxia smiled and looked at Su Yu deeply. She giggled and swallowed it on the spot. After a while, Gongsun Wuxia's body exuded a strong vitality, which was constantly dissipating from her pores. However, there were no changes to Gongsun Wuxia's body, even after a long time had passed. Gongsun Wuxia's small face darkened as she said, The medicinal power has already invaded my limbs and all my meridians. It's useless. However, it's very comfortable. It's like my body has taken a bath from the inside out. Su Yu furrowed his brows. If the spring of life of the Wood Clan of all creations couldn't be cleansed, then the spring of life of the Wood Clan of Mortal Fairy wouldn't work either. The only difference between the two was the intensity of vitality. There was no qualitative difference in the effect of cleansing the body. Could it be that he needed the tree goddess spring of life? I'll give you another 5 drops. Take them slowly when you go back. Perhaps they'll have an effect if you accumulate them. Su Yu thought about it for a moment, then gave her 5 drops without changing his expression. Su Yu. Su are. You Su. Su. You seem to be very rich. You should know how precious the spring of life is. Gongsun Wuxia was elated when she heard this, and she couldn't stop smiling. Besides, Bing Wuxin looked at Gongsun Wuxia and said, "You gave her the spring of life. Why didn't you give it to me? I'm your fiancé." Suyu was startled. "Do you need it?" Bing Wuxin glared at her. "It's not a matter of whether I need it or not." For some reason, Suyu was so considerate to Gongsun Wuxia, but he treated her so casually. She, who had always been emotionless, felt disgusted and uncomfortable. Suyu thought for a moment, then said, "Senior Sister Wuxin, if you have time tonight, I'd like to talk to you alone. There's something I need to clarify with you." "All right." Bing Wuxin nodded her snow-white chin without hesitation. After returning to the Demon Mountain, the three of them went back to their respective houses. Suyu immediately opened the cultivation technique he had obtained, the meteor light stream formation. When he placed the jade slip on his forehead, a complete cultivation technique appeared in his mind. Mo Tianxian had personally examined this cultivation technique, so it shouldn't have been tampered with by the Wood Clan's people. Rather than calling this cultivation technique a cultivation technique, it would be better to call it formation. As long as he had enough magical treasures, he would be able to set up the meteor light stream formation according to its instructions. After thinking for a moment, Suyu took out the dry cloud 5 elemental formations formation pearl. Suyu had fused the blue formation pearl with the underworld pearl and refined it into its current form. As for the other 4, they hadn't been used for a long time because their grades were too low. A semi-manufactured spiritual artifact couldn't even be considered a spiritual artifact, so its might was quite limited. "I can only make do with it," Suyu said. Suyu said if he had the chance, he would look for a few more high-grade round magical treasures and use them for now. Suyu got rid of all distracting thoughts, then arranged the underworld pearl and the 5 spherical magical treasures according to the cultivation technique's instructions. Shortly after, he operated the great formation according to the cultivation technique's instructions. All of a sudden, the 5 spherical beads floated up and revolved around Suyu at high speed. At first, they left behind many residual shadows, but they gradually turned into nothingness and disappeared. In the end, they looked like the 5 spherical beads were fixed in place. In fact, they were revolving at such a high speed that it seemed like they were fixed in place without any changes to the naked eye. The rapid rotation of the 5 spherical beads caused a shocking vortex to form in the central region, which crazily pulled everything in its surroundings toward the formation center. Once one was sucked into the formation center, one would be pulled in by a suction force from all directions, unable to move at all. Suyu felt like he was sinking into sand, and it was difficult for him to move. Even the slightest movement of his fingers was extremely slow. He believed that a middle stage almighty, or even a 6th grade almighty, would be slowed down if they were sucked into it. Shortly after, the 5 rotating spherical beads descended rapidly, shrinking the area around them. The objects that were sucked into the formation were bombarded by the 5 rotating spherical beads one after another, and they were bombarded at an extremely high speed. When the 5 spherical beads reached Suyu's head, almost everything in the formation suffered a destructive blow. The 4 formation beads were fine, but even the underworld pearl could shatter one's body with just a slight touch, let alone being bombarded multiple times. If the All Creation's old monster could be fixed in the formation, he could rely on this formation to blast All Creation's old monsters into smithereens. The only flaw was that this cultivation technique couldn't trap All Creation's old monsters. All Creation's old monsters could easily tear the space apart and break the formation seal. However, Suyu was already very satisfied. If he encountered a top-notch middle stage almighty like the Shao's family master again, he would be able to deal with him easily. Suyu put away the 5 spherical beads. He was extremely satisfied with this cultivation technique. "Master," after muttering to himself for a long time, Suyu couldn't help but call out to Yin Yazi. Yin Yazi's soul appeared in his body, and he stared at Suyu. After a long while, he let out a long sigh. The new generation excels the old, and each generation has its own talented people. It was my mistake not to have given you the book of First Heavens earlier. If Yin Yazi wanted to know what was happening in the outside world, he could do so easily. The changes in Su Yu's body couldn't escape his eyes. Su Yu said embarrassedly, "Master, I couldn't have comprehended the Book of First Heavens without the knowledge of the languages of the 10,000 clans." "Ha! Do I need you to comfort an old man like me? Incompetence is incompetence." Yin Yazi glared at Su Yu. As a master, the happiest and the most unhappy thing was the same thing. The disciple had surpassed the master. Su Yu chuckled, and his face became solemn. "Master, I want to ask you something. Does the Book of Hearts, O's, have any binding power on all creation's strong men?" Yin Yazi replied without hesitation, "Of course it does. Even mortal fairies can't escape the binding power of the Book of Hearts Oaths, let alone the all creation's mysterious realm." "Is that so?" Su Yu's eyes were filled with doubt, and he told Yin Yazi about his agreement with Mo Tianxian. After listening to him, Yin Yazi stroked his beard and said, "If your intuition isn't wrong, it's not that she can escape the Book of Hearts Oaths, but that she isn't afraid of its backlash." He then added, "Once the Book of Hearts Oaths is destroyed, it will turn into a knot in the cultivator's heart. Normally, nothing can be seen, but once the cultivator reaches a critical juncture of a breakthrough or comprehension, it will become agitated, and the cultivator won't be able to proceed smoothly. But if this palace mistress, Mo, has already given up on further cultivation, and she tore the Book of Hearts Oaths apart, no one can do anything about it." Su Yu furrowed his brows, feeling uneasy. "Master, is there any way to guard against it?" His intuition told him that Mo Tianxian was most likely the latter. She hadn't made a breakthrough for many years, and she had already given up on further cultivation. So, it was entirely possible for her to tear up the Book of Hearts Oaths and search Su Yu's soul. Yin Yazi chuckled. "The soul search is a secret technique of the soul, and it's quite simple to block it. I'll just set a soul seal on the surface of your soul, and she won't be able to search it. This seal has another function, and it's that you can hide the memories you want to hide within it. This way, she will only be able to search your ordinary soul." Upon hearing the former, Su Yu furrowed his brows. Not being able to search her soul would only make Mo Tianxian more suspicious. However, the latter could make Mo Tianxian give up temporarily. After a short while, Yin Yazi took out a speck of light the size of a grain of rice from between his brows and placed it between Su Yu's brows. When it touched Su Yu's brows, Yin Yazi furrowed his brows. Soon, Su Yu felt as if his soul was wearing a thick armor, and it was unprecedentedly sturdy. If she wants to do something to you, you don't have to resist it. You can even let her do whatever she wants, Yin Yazi said. Su Yu nodded. "Yes, I understand what to do now." Yin Yazi said, "Then I'll retreat for now. I can feel a spatial fluctuation brewing. Palace Mistress Mo is coming." However, before he retreated, he paused slightly and stared at Su Yu's brows as he said, "The next time you come out, I'll deal with the Tao Tai's eye between your brows again." As he spoke of the Tao Tai's eye, Yin Yazi's tone became a little heavier. "Master, is there something wrong with this eye? Did I do something wrong?" Su Yu couldn't help but ask. He hadn't explained the formation of this eye to Yin Yazi in detail, but Yin Yazi had specifically brought it up, which made Su Yu feel a little uneasy. Yin Yazi stared at Su Yu's brows, as if he could see through them. He sighed and said, "It's not your fault. I didn't stop you in time." Su Yu's heart thumped. Could there be something wrong with this eye? As he recalled the use of this eye, it was used by the demon race, and it wasn't suitable for the human race. Could it be that there was something wrong with it? Chapter 946. Touching the space between his brows, Su Yu's heart sank. He had been forced to refine the Tao Tai's eye, and there was indeed a problem. However, this was not the time to think about this. Su Yu immediately sat down with his legs crossed and pretended to close his eyes to cultivate. Before long, a faint spatial fluctuation reverberated in the room. Even without opening his eyes, Su Yu could sense that a person had silently descended upon the house. "Are you meditating?" "Just nice." A black-clothed woman floated in Su Yu's room, looking at him quietly. Su Yu's performance had piqued Mo Tianquan's interest, including in the main hall just now. What kind of person could stimulate the essence with inherited memories? What kind of person could have the profound meaning of heaven and earth flicker in his eyes? Space magical powers, divine decree, and soul talent. Finally, Mo Tianxian was still brooding over Su Yu's true identity. If she did not search his soul thoroughly, she would not be able to resolve her doubts. Seeing that Su Yu had entered a meditative state, demonic energy emerged from Mo Tianxuan's palm and quietly enveloped Su Yu's body. Su Yu did not feel it at all and was still meditating. This will prevent you from feeling any pain, and it will also prevent you from realizing that your soul is being searched. Mo Tianxian did not doubt whether Su Yu had really entered a meditative state, because she had never thought that Su Yu had the ability to predict her arrival in advance. Mo Tianxian extended her slender finger and touched the space between Su Yu's brows. An ice-cold touch, like a tentacle, penetrated deep into Su Yu's soul, searching for his past memories. After a cup of tea's time, Mo Tianxian slightly furrowed her brows. After a cup of tea's time, her face was full of suspicion. After the last incense stick's time, Mo Tianxian withdrew her finger and stared at Su Yu in surprise. What's going on? I can't search for any relevant memories. Regarding Su Yu's space magical powers, divine decree, soul talent, and how he managed to resonate with the essence wood, it was as if someone had cut off all the relevant memories. She even found that Su Yu had lost a large part of his memory. The memory of a year ago was completely blank, as if it had never happened. After thinking for a while, Mo Tianxian withdrew the demonic energy that enveloped Su Yu and instilled a pure, mighty power into the top of Su Yu's head. Su Yu's eyes widened, and he woke up from his meditative state. It's you. When did you come in my room? What did you do to me? Mo Tianxuan's face was as cold as ice. She snorted and said, Cut the crap. Let me ask you, why is your memory from a year ago blank? There are also some related memories, but I can't find any trace of them. I can't even find the memory of when we met. Did you tamper with your memories? Su Yu was infuriated by the repeated interrogation. Did you search my soul while I was meditating? Are you not afraid of the heart's oath scroll? Su Yu's reaction was very realistic, and it didn't seem like he was faking it. Mo Tianxian didn't notice anything amiss, and she said coldly, I'm asking you a question. Speak. Su Yu's expression changed several times, but he swallowed his anger and said, You are a dignified palace master, yet you go back on your word. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. Back then, because of my cultivation, my lifespan was greatly reduced, and that's why I'm so old now. In fact, my soul strength was also damaged at that time. Not only did my old memories disappear, but my recent memories would also often become blurry. If you can't find the memories you want for my soul, then I can only apologize to you. Su Yu snorted coldly. Mo Tianxian was surprised, and she sized up Su Yu's old body once again. Now, she somewhat believed Su Yu's words. Su Yu's dangerous cultivation, which had almost exhausted all of his lifespan, could really harm his soul. Hence, Su Yu's words were somewhat credible. You aren't lying to me, are you? Mo Tianxian wasn't willing to accept this. She had assumed that she would find many interesting memories, but she was greatly disappointed. She couldn't even ascertain whether it was really that ruthless demonic man who had healed her injuries. Humph! Didn't you already search my soul? Why are you still asking me? Su Yu was furious. Mo Tianxian thought about it for a moment, then gave up for the time being. However, she still stared at Su Yu for a while. I don't know why, but I always feel like you're hiding something. You should behave yourself, and don't let me get hold of you. After she spoke, she tore open a spatial fissure and left. Su Yu's expression was unsightly, and he was so furious that he couldn't cultivate peacefully even after midnight. In the main hall, a mirror appeared in front of Mo Tianxian, and Su Yu's current state was displayed in it. After she observed him for a long while, she asked suspiciously, Is he really not faking it? After she observed him for a long while and ascertained that Su Yu was really angry, she closed the mirror in disappointment. Su Yu obviously didn't know that Mo Tianxian was still observing him in secret after she left. However, To be on the safe side, Su Yu pretended to be angry, just in case. It was only when the next day's dawn did Su Yu's anger gradually dissipate. I should have managed to deceive her for the time being. As for when Mo Tianxian will search my soul next time, I must still take precautions in advance. Su Yu broke out in cold sweat. He had hidden all of Jiuzhou Continent's memories in a seal, as well as the other important memories. This was the only way he could deceive everyone. Meanwhile, outside the Red Blood Palace, in a mysterious place, Deputy Region Master Xiao and the Wood Clan's people were standing on a giant rock. Deputy Region Master Zhao's expression was unsightly. Hateful. We failed at the last moment, and it's all thanks to that lad. The Wood Clan's people crossed their arms and pondered. Jinmu, how should we explain this to the Region Master? It was a matter that was almost in the bag, yet it ended up in such a state. The Region Master's great plan will probably be delayed again, and if we go back like this, we won't have a good ending, Deputy Region Master Xiao said as he stared at Jinmu. Jinmu had a special background, and even the Heavenly Knife Region's master had to give him face. If Jinmu could take responsibility for this matter, then the punishment he would receive would be lessened greatly. Such a grave mistake occurred, and even I will be punished by the master, let alone you, Jinmu said thoughtfully. However, we can't avoid punishment, but we still have a chance to atone for our mistakes by meritorious deeds. Deputy Region Master Zhao's eyes lit up. Tell me. Jinmu's dull eyes revealed a human-like coldness. Do you still need to tell me? It's obviously to get rid of Su Yuxian and get rid of the Heavenly Knife Region's greatest threat. Deputy Region Master Xiao stroked his chin and muttered to himself. Are you referring to the Wood Clan's language that Su Yuxian is proficient in? Jinmu nodded in response, then shook his head. It's not just that. He has spatial magical abilities, divine decree, soul talent, and many other talents. He's on par with the Purple Cloud Palace's ancient spiritual bodies, Gu Taishu. He will surely become the Heavenly Knife Region's great enemy in the future, and we should kill him while he's still in the cradle. I believe that the Heavenly Knife Region's master will understand the significance of such a move. In fact, he didn't mention that Su Yu wasn't just proficient in the Wood Clan's language, but that he was a mysterious person who could even resonate with the Wood Clan's inherited bloodline memories. As a member of the Wood Clan, Jinmu was quite curious about what secrets he had. I agree, but Su Yuxian lives in the depths of the palace, and we will probably be discovered by Mo Tianxian the moment we step into the Red Blood Palace. Deputy Region Master Xiao voiced his concern. Jinmu sneered coldly. Why do you need to go through so much trouble? I've already prepared for this. Do you really think that my high-grade legendary cultivation technique is so easy to get? Chapter 9:47. Su Yu rested for a moment, then looked at the bright sunlight outside. There were few people around, so Su Yu got up and went to Bing Wuxin's house. He had to resolve some misunderstandings as soon as possible. When he arrived outside the house, the door opened silently, and Bing Wuxin, who was sitting quietly inside, said, "Come in." It was obvious that she had been waiting for Su Yu. "What do you want to talk to me about alone?" Bing Wuxin asked. Su Yu pondered for a long time, then looked at her and said, "I want to talk about the matter between us." Bing Wuxin's expression became unnatural for a moment. Then she said calmly, "Is it about our engagement? If it is, there's nothing to talk about. I, Bing Wuxin, am a man of my word, and I won't go back on it." In her eyes, Su Yu had been pursuing her, and she had a good impression of him. So, it wouldn't be a problem for her to agree. Su Yu said seriously, "Senior Sister Wuxin, that's exactly what I want to talk about. I hope you're mentally prepared." Bing Wuxin's heart thumped, and she stared at Su Yu vigilantly. "What do you want to do?" She thought that Su Yu had an even more excessive request. Su Yu took a breath, and was about to tell her the whole story. Suddenly, a jade slip in Su Yu's bosom was boiling hot. Su Yu felt the pain, and he immediately grabbed it. It was the jade slip that recorded the meteor light stream formation. Before Su Yu could grab it, the jade slip melted and turned into drops of jade-like spiritual liquid, which seeped into Su Yu's body through his pores. After the spiritual liquid entered his body, it was like a living thing, and it quickly attached itself to Su Yu's meridians and bones. The sudden change made Su Yu's expression change slightly. He immediately used his transparent eye to observe the strange changes of the jade-like spiritual liquid in his body, and he knew that it was far from good. With a thought, he activated the vital energy in his body and forced all of the spiritual liquid out of his body. However, the jade-like spiritual liquid seemed to have sensed it, and it condensed into a ball, blocking his meridians and preventing his vital energy from circulating smoothly. Then, something even more bizarre happened. The spiritual liquid attached to his bones forced them to move. Su Yu immediately used his physical strength to resist this power. However, the energy contained in the spiritual liquid was extremely strong, and he couldn't suppress it with his physical strength alone. Su Yu felt like his body was occupied by the spiritual liquid, and it was being controlled. That move, Su Yu's expression turned grave, as he could feel a strong wood-based aura from the jade-like spiritual liquid. Bing Wuxin walked over with a strange look on her face. She asked, "Is there something wrong with you?" Everything that had happened just now had happened in a very short period of time, and it had been done very discreetly. Bing Wuxin was not aware of it at all. Su Yu hurriedly waved his hand, signaling her not to come over. However, at that moment, Su Yu realized that he had even lost his voice. Apart from his bones, the spiritual liquid was spreading to his entire body, trying to gain complete control over him. Bing Wuxin didn't understand Su Yu's meaning. She walked over, raised her brows, and berated him. "Why are you trying to show off?" But in that instant, something that Bing Wuxin did not expect happened. All of a sudden, Su Yu's palm grabbed Bing Wuxin's chest and accurately grabbed a certain part of her chest. Bing Wuxin was stunned, as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood rooted to the ground in a daze. It was only when Su Yu pinched her with his hand that the pain jolted Bing Wuxin out of her trance. A face that was as cold as frost gradually turned red, and then it turned completely red, like a red veil. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and her silver teeth were tightly clenched together, making a clattering sound. Her beautiful face was flushed, and her beautiful eyes were wide open. A terrifying, murderous energy whistled out of her body. The whole Demon Mountain, as well as the surrounding areas, were engulfed by this murderous energy. Gongsun Wuxia opened her sleepy eyes and climbed up to the roof in her pajamas. She mumbled, "Sister Wuxin, what happened?" As Gongsun Wuxia spoke, she suddenly caught a glimpse of Su Yu and Bing Wuxin, who were staring at each other. When her gaze fell on the posture of Su Yu's palm, she was startled and woke up from her sleepy state. Her eyes were wide open. "Brother Yuxian is molesting Sister Wuxin?" Gongsun Wuxia rubbed her eyes. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, and after confirming it several times, she was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. "Is this what you wanted to talk to me about when you came to talk to me alone?" Bing Wuxin's face was flushed, and blood was rising from the top of her head. She stared fixedly at Su Yu and spoke in a bone-chilling tone. Su Yu felt bitter in his heart. "What's going on?" Bing Wuxin's approach made Ling Yu instinctively feel threatened, so he subconsciously moved his palm to block it. Coincidentally, he managed to grab it. However, he couldn't open his mouth to explain, and even if he could, he wouldn't be able to. Hearing that Su Yu was silent and still grabbing her sensitive spot, Bing Wuxin was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. You pervert." She had waited patiently for a whole night, but all she got was Su Yu molesting her. Although she had prepared herself for Su Yu's indecent thoughts, she didn't expect that he would be dissatisfied and take liberties with her in public. It was as if Bing Wuxin's suppressed fury had completely erupted. "Die! Heartless sword scar!" Bing Wuxin was furious, and she slapped Su Yu's palm away. At the same time, she pulled out her sword. A mighty sword was condensed on the blade, and she slashed it towards Su Yu's head. Su Yu hated the jade slip to the core, and he was even more furious. Given Bing Wuxin's temper, which man would dare to want her? The heartless sword scar had boundless might, and it wasn't at the fairy level at all. Su Yu could feel the 9th grade Almighty's aura flickering on her chest, and it was getting stronger and stronger. It seemed like it was about to break through some kind of limit and erupt completely. So you cursed inwardly. His body was under Bing Wuxin's control, and he couldn't dodge it easily. Fortunately, Ling Yu had a spiritual nature, and when he sensed danger, he controlled Su Yu's body to soar into the air. He crossed hundreds of miles with a single step and fled into the distance. Bing Wuxin's eyes were ice cold, and her face was flushed. She shouted angrily, "Pervert, if I don't destroy your body and soul today, I'm not a human." The strange emotions that Su Yu had given her when he had given her millions of merit points were instantly extinguished by her anger and humiliation. Bing Wuxin stepped into the air and chased after him, her killing intent shocking the heavens. Along the way, none of the disciples or elders dared to obstruct her. They all looked at each other in dismay as they watched the two of them chase after each other. Gongsun Wuxia chuckled as she looked at Bing Wuxin's departing figure. She then stretched her body and said, "Well, it seems interesting for a couple to fight in bed. Let me follow them and take a look." In the depths of the fairy confining forest, Jinmu was concentrating on casting mysterious hand seals on a giant rock. All of a sudden, Jinmu opened his eyes and revealed a cold smile. "It's here. That jade slip has a seal that I refined, the Soulwood Essence Sunflower. Once it enters your body, even if you are an all-creation old monster, you will still be controlled by me. Deputy Region Master Xiao, you should prepare yourself. Take advantage of my control to kill him," Jinmu said. In terms of cultivation, Jinmu was as strong as a 6th grade almighty, and he couldn't be distracted by elixirs and hand seals. As for Deputy Region Master Xiao, he was a dignified 9th grade almighty, and it would be effortless for him to kill Su Yu. Deputy Region Master Xiao curled the corners of his mouth into a cold smile, and he looked in the direction of the Red Blood Palace. "Being able to kill a genius with my own hands makes my trip worthwhile." However, Deputy Region Master Xiao suddenly stiffened. Chapter 948. Qila. All of a sudden, countless fine cracks appeared in the sky. Streaks of sword lights filled the sky like rain, covering the sun and the sky. With Su Yu as the center, they covered a 100-mile radius. Wherever the sword light passed, everything was sliced apart. The dry cloud shattered and turned into mist. Space trembled, tearing apart pieces of pitch-black darkness. That all-destroying sword chi could be said to be the pinnacle. Deputy Region Master Xiao and Jinmu were also enveloped by the sword light. Under the sword light, both of them had the illusion that they had turned into a whirlpool of sword chi and were about to be chewed to pieces. Deputy Region Master Xiao narrowed his eyes. What a profound sword intent. It should have reached the 2nd stage of the sword Dao, the traceless sword heart. To have such a profound sword intent at such a young age, it was truly remarkable. He is somewhat similar to Jian Wuxing. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The Red Blood Palace's outer sanctum had too many geniuses. At this moment, the sword chi enveloped him, penetrating through every opening. Deputy Region Master Xiao did not dare to be careless. He condensed his vital energy to form a suit of armor, protecting his body. On the other hand, Jinmu frowned, and he had no choice but to stop forming seals. His entire body surged with a jade-green glow that was overflowing with vitality. When the sword light attacked, more than half of Deputy Region Master Zhao's true energy armor was torn apart by the sword light. It was only a few inches away from piercing into his bones. On the other hand, the emerald green light on the surface of Jinmu's body swayed and bounced the powerful sword chi back. Su Yu took advantage of the moment when Jinmu couldn't control him to regain his mobility. He immediately condensed the Milky Way star sand in his right palm and stuck it to his abdomen. In just 2 to 3 breaths, the jade-like spiritual liquid that had seeped into his body was completely absorbed. Jinmu's hands, which were about to weave more signs, came to an abrupt stop. He looked at Su Yu in bewilderment, his eyes flickering with shock. As a matter of fact, it would be difficult for Su Yu to injure him with ordinary poisons. However, he had been careless and didn't use the Milky Way star sand at the first moment, which was why he had ended up in such a passive state. Once his body was freed, Suyu immediately activated the 5-pulse dominant wave. A layer of 5-colored light enveloped his body. The incoming sword light was blocked by the 5-pulse primal wave. However, it only managed to block for a moment before it was penetrated by the sword chi. Suyu took advantage of the moment when the sword energy was weakened to move backward while shouting, "Why aren't you stopping? I'm being controlled." He glanced at Jinmu and Deputy Region Master Xiao out of the corner of his eye. His gaze landed on Jinmu, and his eyes narrowed deeply. From the very start, he felt that this person was extremely strange. What he saw with his soul wasn't a real body, but a void. Moreover, this person was proficient in such a mysterious manipulation technique, and if Bing Wuxin hadn't managed to pin him down by accident, Suyu would have been in deep trouble. A trace of killing intent slowly flashed. Although Bing Wuxin was furious, how could she ignore Deputy Region Master Xiao and Jimu? Didn't you leave a long time ago? Why are you sneaking around here? Bing Wuxin's tone was unfriendly as she stared at them coldly. Bing Wuxin believed Suyu's words as she gradually calmed down. Before Suyu touched her, there was indeed something strange about it. Thinking back to how he had been running all the way here, it was possible that someone had controlled his body and brought him here. As she thought of this, she glared at Suyu fiercely. The numbness in her chest caused her to blush, and she was still a little embarrassed. Since things had come to this, Deputy Region Master Xiao no longer hid it. He sneered and said, "Nothing much. I just wanted to invite Master Su over for a chat. Miss Bing, you can go back now." "Humph, you're really daring." Bing Wuxin's eyes flickered with a cold glint, and she shifted all of her previous anger onto them. "You can't afford to lose, so you want to kill me? What if I say I won't leave?" Jimu crossed his arms in front of his chest and said coldly, "Why are you wasting your breath on her? Just stay here with her. You take down Bing Wuxin, and I'll deal with that lad." Deputy Region Master Xiao nodded. "Fine, I'll test this lass's power." After he spoke, he turned into a sharp arrow and flew toward Bing Wuxin. "Come at me." Bing Wuxin laughed angrily and waved her sword. Heart sword traceless. Deputy Region Master Xiao had become one of the Heavenly Knife region's 10 Deputy Region Masters, so he was obviously not an ordinary person. He pressed his thumb against his middle finger and released a ripple that resembled a sword light. Primordial returning sword wave. Sizzle. 2 kinds of sword energies collided in the air and destroyed each other. Suyu looked at the 2 people fighting, then at Jimu. He tapped the ground lightly on the tip of his foot and flew toward a distant place. Jimu looked at Bing Wuxin and said, "I'll leave her to you." After he spoke, he quickly chased after Suyu. This was the outcome that Suyu hoped to see. Firstly, he could lure Jimu away and prevent Bing Wuxin from being attacked from both sides. Secondly, he could avoid people's eyes and ears so he could act freely. The 2 of them flew toward the deeper regions of the fairy confining forest. Suyu slowed down gradually and stopped above a dense forest. He turned around and looked coldly at Jinmu, who was approaching him. Jinmu stood among the clouds and looked at Suyu. He raised his brows and asked, "Were you waiting for me?" It was obvious that Suyu's intention wasn't to escape, but to wait here. Jinmu couldn't help but survey the surroundings vigilantly. "I want to know what kind of creature you are." Suyu looked at Jinmu and said, "You seem like someone from the Wood Clan, but you don't have a soul. You're like a puppet, but you have a higher spiritual nature than a puppet." Jinmu's pupils contracted upon hearing this, as if his secret had been seen through. He asked in a deep voice, "What else do you know?" "I'll have to ask you about the rest," Suyu said. Jinmu's expression became gloomy. "My decision to kill you is really correct. I will only feel at ease if someone like you dies." Regardless of whether it was because Suyu had caused the Essence Wood's inherited bloodline to resonate with it, or because he had seen through his body, he was determined to kill Jinmu. "You will need to have the ability to do so." Suyu squinted his eyes. "My ability isn't limited to just knowing a few Wood Clan's words," Jinmu said in mockery as he started weaving signs with his hands. Buzz. All of a sudden, 2 strong branches extended out of the great tree beneath Suyu's feet and wound around his feet. Such branches were quite similar to the branches in the desolate, evil jungle. However, the tree beneath Su Yu's feet was clearly an ordinary tree, and it didn't even have a spiritual intelligence. So, how could it be a high-grade evil tree? When Su Yu observed it carefully, he discovered that the branches didn't come from the great tree. Instead, they had suddenly shot out of the great tree's body and pierced through its trunk. The branches came from the depths of the earth, and their source was Jinmu's feet. Drops of emerald green liquid were dripping from the soles of his feet, and with every drop, a long root would quickly grow out of the depths of the earth. The root was extremely firm, and as it wound around Su Yu's feet, even though his body's power rivaled the Divine Master's, he still couldn't struggle free of it. Don't waste your energy. This is my clan's evil ghost grass juice, and it's even harder than a high-grade spiritual artifact, Jinmu said coldly. He strode over with large strides, while killing intent surged in his eyes. Regardless of how you cause my clan's inherited memories to resonate with you, or how you saw through my body, everything will come to an end here. Swoosh! Jinmu raised his palm. His arms suddenly lengthened, while his palm gradually shrank until it turned into a sharp and powerless thorn. Chapter 949. It was at this moment that Su Yu's sleeves shook and a formless thread streaked across his feet. The extremely hard branch was easily cut into two pieces. Su Yu's shoulder slid to the side, and he managed to avoid the sharp thorn. At the same time, he flicked his thumb and index finger, cutting the thorn. A large amount of emerald green liquid gushed out of his cut arm. However, Jinmu's expression didn't change, and he didn't seem to feel any pain. He just looked at Su Yu in surprise, wondering how he had managed to do it. In terms of hardness, his arm, which had turned into a thorn, was far greater than the branch, yet it had still been cut off. His severed arm was engulfed by a layer of hazy emerald green light, and it quickly recovered. He didn't feel any pain during the whole process. I underestimated you. It seems like I can't deal with you if I don't use some tricks, Jinmu said coldly. A tender green sprout suddenly grew out of his chest, and it fluttered in the wind. It was quite fresh and tender. Wisps of green mist came out of the sprout, and it looked like they were rushing through the air. The green mist quickly disappeared into the void, and it didn't seem remarkable at all. Shortly after, the sprout quickly grew bigger, and it became as tall as a human. It then left Jinmu's chest and floated in the void, emitting a beautiful light. As the light flickered, the human-sized sprout gradually took on a human form. As a breeze blew past, the human-sized sprout revealed its true form. It was a graceful woman who was clad in emerald green clothes. Su Yu was startled by the woman's figure. Lu Chuyi. He hadn't expected that the sprout would take on such a form. For a moment, Su Yu even suspected that he had unknowingly fallen into some kind of illusion. So you know her. It's good that I just used her blood essence to nurture a seed, and its power is about 70% of the main bodies, Jinmu said. Su Yu's eyes flickered. He remembered that when Jinmu challenged him, he had asked for 10 drops of his blood essence as a wager. What a strange magical ability. A single drop of his blood essence could replicate 70% of his opponent's power. Charge! Jinmu shouted in a low voice, while he charged at Su Yu with Lu Chuyi. Lu Chuyi held a wooden longsword in her hand. Her face was expressionless, and her eyes were dull as she quickly attacked Su Yu. Her movement technique wasn't any weaker than a level 6 Divine Master, and the aura she emitted was also at the same level as a level 6 Divine Master. Facing Lu Chuyi, Su Yu hesitated for a moment before his gaze became ice cold. He activated the Fire Essence Jade, unfolded his wings, and dodged to the right. However, just as Su Yu was about to dodge the attack, a powerful air current appeared behind him without a sound and pierced toward his back. Su Yu snorted coldly, and without giving a second thought, he used his silk to cut the thing that was attacking him in half. At the same time, his right eye glowed red. Spatial shift. Lu Chuyi, who had brushed past Su Yu's shoulder, was shifted 3 inches away from his right. His mind flickered, and the silk cut Lu Chuyi's waist, cutting her in half. What was shocking was that Lu Chuyi was safe and sound. Instead, her body had fused again. Suyu furrowed his brows, then used the silk once again to cut it. This time, Lu Chuyi was cut in half from top to bottom, but she didn't die. Instead, her wounds continued to heal, and she recovered in the blink of an eye. After coming to his senses, Lu Chuyi swept her long sword towards Suyu, forcing him to retreat. A grave look appeared on Suyu's face. She was really difficult to deal with. If he didn't have a special way to deal with her, it would be impossible for him to kill Lu Chuyi, let alone Jimu. The Wood Tribe's ability to regenerate and repair itself was quite troublesome. Spatial magical power? Good, good. It's said that you have an ancient spatial spiritual body, and I won't hide it from you. My trip to the Red Blood Palace wasn't just for the Heavenly Knife region's master's errand, but for an even more important matter. My master ordered me to take your blood essence, Jinmu said coldly. Master? Who is Jinmu's master? Isn't he the Heavenly Knife region's master? If the Heavenly Knife region's master had a true Wood Tribe member like Jinmu, he wouldn't have suffered a crushing defeat in the desolate, evil jungle's sacrificial ceremony. What a coincidence. I'm also quite interested in you, Suyu said coldly. Jinmu laughed mockingly. You overestimate yourself. I guess Deputy Region Master Zhao's side is almost done, so it's time for me to end things here. After he spoke, green sprouts sprouted from Jinmu's chest once again. Moreover, it wasn't just one, but 10. When all 10 sprouts left his body and turned into human figures in the air, 10 terrifying auras bore down on him like giant waves. They were all young elites, but Suyu didn't recognize any of them. The only thing he could feel was that they were all at least level 7 Divine Masters. One of them even had a powerful aura of a level 9 Divine Master. Even 70% of his power was at the level 9 Divine Master realm. So even if his real cultivation hadn't reached the all-creation realm, it should still be at the peak of the level 9 Divine Master realm. Suyu couldn't help but look at the youth. He was wearing a golden mask, and only a pair of green eyes could be seen. They emitted a faint green light, and they seemed like a pair of snake eyes. There was also a pair of strange pupils in the depths of his green eyes. A normal person's pupils were usually round. However, this person's pupils were like a blossoming flower. They were beautiful, ice-cold, and had a devilish charm to them. This was the first time Suyu had seen such a strange pair of eyes. As Suyu faced the numerous geniuses' clones, the wings on his back flickered, and he immediately flew away. It would be difficult to deal with just Lu Chuyi, who couldn't be killed, let alone 11 of them. There was even a strange golden-masked man with green eyes and flower pupils among them. Jinmu sneered coldly and said, You want to leave? As he issued an order, the 11 clones immediately chased after Suyu. With their great power, they managed to encircle Suyu in the twinkling of an eye. The 11 clones attacked him at the same time, and in an instant, a multicolored attack engulfed the whole area where Suyu was. When the radiance dissipated, there was nothing left of him. Jinmu was startled. Did he die so easily? Jinmu walked over and stood at the place where Suyu had died. He raised his brows and said, Even if his body was torn to pieces, there should still be a bloody aura. Did he escape? He wasn't willing to accept this. So he ordered the 11 clones to look around, but they didn't manage to find anything. Darn it, he really escaped. How did he manage to do it? Jinmu asked angrily. The clones of the Heavenly Knife region's 10 great young experts' blood essence unexpectedly couldn't deal with him. When he was about to continue looking for Suyu, the jade pendant on his waist suddenly shone. He crushed it, and an urgent cry for help came from it. You're really trash. You can't even deal with a woman. Jinmu snorted coldly. He hesitated for a moment, then clenched his teeth and said, Follow me. Jinmu quickly went back with the 11 clones. A short while after he left, a spatial fluctuation suddenly occurred on a big tree in the forest. It seemed like something had been lifted, and Suyu's body was revealed. Next to him was Gongsun Wuxia, who was right next to him. Brother Yuxian, isn't my Dolua spiritual cloak amazing? Gongsun Wuxia asked with a smile. It turned out that she had been following Suyu all along, and she had used this strange cloak to conceal herself. She had protected Su Yu at a crucial moment, then escaped from him. The cloak was quite amazing, and it couldn't just conceal one's body and aura. It could even conceal one's life force. It was impossible to see what was beneath the cloak from the outside. The cloak was also infused with a special power, and it was quite similar to the Central Prefecture's King's Mortal Fairy's power. "It's amazing, but you don't need to get so close to me," Su Yu said as he lowered his head and looked at her. She was holding Su Yu's arm tightly, and half of her body was leaning against his arm. The cloak was quite spacious, and it wouldn't be difficult for it to accommodate another person. "It's safer this way. What if those clones discover us?" Gongsun Wuxia said as she rolled her eyes. Su Yu stood up and looked in the direction where Jinmu had gone. He then said in a deep voice, "Bing Wuxin is in trouble, and we must go back to help her immediately." "Oh, can you defeat so many clones?" "They are quite powerful," Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile, still holding Su Yu's arm. Su Yu muttered to himself, "Jinmu isn't difficult to deal with, and if I get a chance, I'm sure I can kill him. The problem is those clones. Judging from the fight just now, their regenerative abilities are quite powerful. Unless I find a special way, it will be difficult to kill them completely." Su Yu furrowed his brows. In fact, he had thought of a way to completely destroy the clones with fire. Wood begets fire, and fire subdues wood. If he used a powerful flame, it would be enough to kill the clones, but the flame must be strong enough. Otherwise, the clones would recover quickly. The small Kylan's flame was powerful, but it was at the final stage of crafting the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword, so it would be difficult for it to borrow its flame. However, if it really didn't work, he would have to delay the crafting of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword and use it to kill the enemies. "Brother Yuxian, I have a way to deal with the clones," Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile, like a cunning fox. "So you asked, oh? What is it?" Swish! Gongsun Wuxia took out a weapon that looked like a halberd. There was a trigger mechanism on the handle, and there was a black hole at the end of the halberd. It was 10 feet long, and it was more than twice as tall as Gongsun Wuxia. At first glance, it seemed like a modern spear. What was different was that this strange weapon wasn't filled with bullets, but talismans. "When I was in danger last time, my father sent someone to give it to me for self-defense. I can use it now," Gongsun Wuxia said. "Don't look down on it, as it's a semi-manufactured fairy artifact. The talismans filled in it are all top-notch. Once it's fired, even a 9th grade Almighty will be blasted into smithereens." So you could feel that those talismans were filled with a powerful fire-based aura, which was only slightly inferior to the small Kylan's purple flames. "Let's use long-range attacks later, and we should be able to kill them one by one," Gongsun Wuxia said. Su Yu said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go there quickly. If we can kill those clones, it'll be much easier to deal with Jinmu." However, Gongsun Wuxia was unmoved, and she just looked at Su Yu with a smile. Su Yu's eyes flickered as he asked, "What do you want?" "This little demoness still doesn't forget to extort me at such a critical juncture." "Hee, I don't want anything. I just want a promise from you, Brother Yuxian," Gongsun Wuxia said. Su Yu furrowed his brows. "It's too vague. What promise?" Chapter 950. Female. Girlfriend? Su Yu was stunned for a moment before he was sure that Gongsun Wuxia had not misheard him. Confusion surged in Su Yu's mind. He had already married Qin Xiener, and he was now Bing Wuxin's fiancé in name. Was a man who would steal her best friend a man? What's so strange about that? It's true that Su Yuxian is Sister Wuxin's fiancé, but I want Su Yu to be my boyfriend. Is there a conflict? Gongsun Wuxia's eyes were shining with cunning. Su Yu was speechless. He could not refute her fallacious reasoning. Ahem, now is not the time to talk about this. Hurry up and help Bing Wuxin. So you try to make a joke. Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile. Why should I lend my semi-manufactured fairy artifact to an outsider? I won't let Su Yuxian save his fiancée unless you promise me. Otherwise, Brother Yuxian will be heartbroken if his beautiful wife is gone. Su Yu was speechless. The situation was urgent, so he had to say, Okay, I promise you, but don't regret it. There's something I need to discuss with you and Bing Wuxin. Things had come to this, so he had to be honest with both of them at the same time. Oh. Gongsun Wuxia waved her fist that symbolized victory. Carrying the spear on her back, she said, "Let's go and save your fiancé." At the place where the giant rock was, Deputy Region Master Xiao was in a sorry state. Ghastly wounds were all over his body, and his right arm had been cut off at the shoulder. The most serious thing was that a bloody hole the size of an egg had been cut open in his abdomen. The fetal crystal had been damaged, and a large amount of vital energy was leaking out. The fetal crystal was the crystallization of vital energy condensed by the almighty Divine Masters. It was the source of vital energy for the almighty Divine Masters. Once it was damaged, the foundation would be damaged, and the cultivation would be crippled. "Who are you?" Deputy Region Master Xiao stared at the woman in front of him, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He was no longer as relaxed as before. Opposite him was a woman with 9 flickering virtual shadows of long swords behind her. Her whole body was emitting sharp sword energy, and a sword-shaped mark was flickering on her chest, vaguely visible through her clothes. The sword-shaped mark contained a majestic sword will. It was as if a supreme sword saint was overlooking the world with a sword. The sword intended emitted was beyond his understanding. It was far beyond the level of the traceless heart sword. In the entire world, there were no more than 10 people who could cultivate sword intent to such a high degree of mastery in the sword Tao. This girl was so young, yet she possessed such a terrifying sword intent. If his cultivation caught up, who would be able to compete with him in the same realm? Who else could this woman be but Bing Wuxin? At this moment, her temperament had changed. She, who was originally cold and elegant, was now surrounded by sharp sword chi. She was like a female sword saint. The 9 illusory swords behind him all had different shapes and were extremely ancient. Each of them gave off an aura that seemed to come from the distant past. One of them was stained with a trace of blood. It was that sword that had chopped off Deputy Region Master Zhao's arm. Bing Wuxin's expression was cold. "You don't need to know. Proud heaven sword technique," Bing Wuxin bellowed. Suddenly, the second sword of the virtual shadow behind her let out a sonorous sword cry. It flew out from Bing Wuxin's back like an arrogant divine dragon and turned into a broken light that streaked across Deputy Region Master Zhao's body. The speed of the sword was so fast that it could be said to be extreme. The space was also cut into faintly discernible black broken lines. Deputy Region Master Xiao only had time to bellow. He pinched his thumb and middle finger together and performed a Guiyuan sword wave. The sharp sword wave collided with the broken light in the air. However, it was silently shattered into pieces. The sword wave rolled backward and pierced through Deputy Region Master Zhao's body along with the broken light. Bang! With a muffled sound, Deputy Region Master Zhao's body seemed to have been cut thousands of times. His body was covered with dense, bloody marks that were as distinct as a fishing net. Then, along the bloody lines, his body continued to disintegrate, turning into large and small pieces of flesh. Deputy Region Master Xiao, a 9th grade almighty, had been killed by Bing Wuxin with just 2 sword strikes. No, to be precise, it was the destruction of his body. An incorporeal soul escaped from his body. It looked terrified and frantically fled toward the horizon. Bing Wuxin's lips curled into a cold smile. She pointed a finger from afar, and a broken light streaked across. It was as fast as lightning and was about to turn Deputy Region Master Zhao's soul into nothingness. However, just as the broken light was about to be destroyed, a muffled sound was heard. It was an emerald green figure who stood in front of Deputy Region Master Xiao, blocking the fatal blow. Taking advantage of this, Deputy Region Master Xiao retreated frantically with lingering fear. He retreated until he was in the middle of a large group of people. Bing Wuxin's eyes turned cold. She glanced at the many emerald green figures and finally fixed her gaze on the golden masked figure. She was slightly shocked. The top 10 genius experts of the Heavenly Knife region, and you by Ling Tian. The golden masked man's name was by Ling Tian. He was a peerless genius who was known as the top expert of the current generation in the Heavenly Knife region. As for the others, They were all famous top-notch experts of the Heavenly Knife region. Every one of them was an existence that could suppress all heroes. They could take charge of an area and become an overlord anywhere in Jojo. She shifted her gaze to Jinmu. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Where is Su Yuxian? She had a bad feeling. Could Su Yuxian have been killed by them? Looking at the 11 genius experts, Bing Wuxin was worried. Take care of yourself first. Deputy Region Master Xiao shot a resentful look at her. His physical body had been destroyed, and only his soul was left. What was the use of that? If he escaped back to the Heavenly Knife region, even if he could find a new body to possess, he would be cut off from all creations due to the sequelae of the possession. It could be said that this was the end of his martial path. Jimu looked at Bing Wuxin from afar. He stared at the 9 sword shadows behind her. His eyes were filled with excitement and surprise. An ancient spiritual body, and it's the legendary bloodline of the Heavenly Sword Clan. Bing Wuxin was also an ancient spiritual body. Rumor has it that those with the bloodline of the Heavenly Sword Clan are born with profound sword wills. Their swordsmanship can reach the pinnacle. Activating one of the 9 sword shadows behind them signifies a certain level of talent, which determines their future swordsmanship. I wonder if you've activated 3 swords. The more Jimu looked, the more excited he became. Although that lad with the spatial spiritual body ran away, I can bring back the blood essence of the Heavenly Sword spiritual body to make up for my mistake. Bing Wuxin's brows relaxed a little. In that case, Su Yuxian had escaped. If you want my blood essence, you'll have to wait until you're dead. Bing Wuxin's eyes gleamed coldly. The remnant light streaked across the sky again and slashed at them. Jimu was calm and composed. He laughed and said, although the Heavenly Sword Clan is powerful, they also have a serious drawback. In the early stages of cultivation, one's cultivation will be suppressed by the sword wills of the 9 sword shadows. Hence, if one's cultivation is not strong enough, as long as one sword misses, the enemy will usually find an opening. As soon as he finished speaking, the remaining 10 figures flew up at the same time and attacked the remnant light together. Hiss! However, this sword was extremely swift and fierce, and it looked down on everything in its path. The 10 replicas could not block this sword. The remnant light pierced through their bodies and sliced them into countless pieces. Bing Wuxin's eyes flickered coldly. It's over. The remnant light suddenly sped up and attacked Jinmu. However, at this moment, a scene that Bing Wuxin did not expect happened. The replicas that had been sliced into pieces by the sword energy actually fused on the spot and formed brand new bodies. 2 of them had even flown over and attacked within 100 feet of Bing Wuxin before the remnant light returned. The sudden change caused Bing Wuxin's expression to change. She exclaimed in surprise, the song of the White Frost Sword. The first sword shadow behind her turned into a white shadow and swept out abruptly. In an instant, the entire sky was covered in white snow. The chill was so shocking that it froze the world. Every snowflake was imbued with a shocking sword energy. Whenever it landed on the surface of a living being, the sword energy contained in it would immediately sever its vitality from the outside to the inside. The few replicas that attacked were all the same. Their vitality was extinguished, and their entire bodies turned into ice sculptures. At first glance, one would think that they had been frozen to death. Little did they know, they were actually killed by the sword wills. However, this was not the end. More replicas rushed over and joined the siege. You're courting death, Bing Wuxin shouted coldly. She raised her hand and waved. The remnant light gave up on chasing after Jinmu and rushed over to help. Crack! In an instant, several people were sliced into pieces. At the same time, frost danced in the air and turned them into ice sculptures one after another. In an instant, all 9 replicas were killed. However, before Bing Wuxin could heave a sigh of relief, she suddenly felt a sense of danger. Looking up, she saw Bai Ling Tian striding toward her with his jade-green flower eyes, his hands behind his back. His posture was calm, and he had an aura of invincibility. Bing Wuxin's eyes turned solemn. She gritted her teeth and attacked with both swords. The Song of the White Frost Sword. The Proud Heaven's Sword Technique. Two illusory swords cut through the sky, as if chasing after the clouds and the moon, and attacked by Lingtian. Bai Lingtian's hands were still behind his back, fearless. The flower petal in the middle of his jade-green eyes bloomed silently, making his flower eyes even more mysterious and bewitching. An eerie scene appeared. Behind Bai Lingtian, 9 illusory swords appeared as well. They were exactly the same as the illusory swords that appeared behind Bing Wuxin. At the same time, the first and second sword shadows flew out at the same time, turning into white frost and remnant light that filled the sky. They clashed with the 2 incoming sword shadows. They were the same sword wills, but Bai Lingtian's cultivation was much higher. Bing Wuxin's 2 sword shadows were repelled and rolled back toward her. Her expression changed, and she hurriedly withdrew the 2 sword shadows. She performed a series of sword techniques and retreated at the same time. However, she still failed to block Bai Lingtian's sword wills. Puff! Bing Wuxin spat out a mouthful of blood mist. Her eyes were solemn. Jade-green eyes, flowery pupils. Bai Lingtian was also an ancient spiritual body. He had a pair of mysterious eyes that could replicate his enemies' moves and release them in a short time. Coupled with the suppression of his cultivation, he could often unleash a more powerful force than himself. For many years, he had never tasted defeat. No one could break the jade-green eyes' flowery pupils. That was the invincible power of his eyes. All of a sudden, a strong gust of wind came. It was Bai Lingtian, who had approached Bing Wuxin with ease, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. He slammed his palm toward the top of her skull. Bing Wuxin's expression changed. Without thinking, she raised her hand and struck. There was a huge gap between their cultivation levels. The strike was unstoppable. With a crack, Bing Wuxin's arm was fractured. Just as the top of her skull was about to be smashed by the strike, a stream of flames that resembled flowing light suddenly shot toward her from a certain void. It was so fast that Bai Lingtian only had to turn his head to take a look before he was hit. Boom! An enormous, shocking flame erupted like a volcano, engulfing a part of the sky and engulfing Bai Lingtian. Bing Wuxin immediately unleashed the Song of White Frost. She turned into a sky full of chilly air, keeping the terrifying flame at bay. Chapter 9:51. Jinmu's and Deputy Region Master Zhao's expressions changed at the same time. Jinmu's face turned gloomy. Replicas could easily recover from ordinary injuries, and they were almost immortal. But their weakness was that they could be easily restrained, and the way to restrain them was with flames. The power of the flame explosion just now had reached the level of destroying flesh and blood essence. The strongest replicas were suddenly destroyed. Jinmu's eyes turned coldly and looked at the 2 people in the distant sky who were approaching on clouds. One of them was lying on the clouds, holding a strange-looking weapon. The next wave of terrifying flame energy was still brewing in the weapon. The person standing beside him was none other than Su Yuxian, who had escaped from the siege. "How dare you come back?" Jinmu's face was gloomy, but his fearful gaze was fixed on the strange-looking weapon. A replica of the heavens-made divine crossbow. What a powerful weapon! The weapon in Gongsun Wuxia's hand was called the heavens-made divine crossbow. "Umph! How dare you hurt Brother Yuxian's fiancée? I'll burn you to death." Gongsun Wuxia snorted and pulled the trigger repeatedly. Jinmu's expression changed slightly. "Get out of the way." Immediately, the replicas obeyed the order and moved away. But before they could move away, Bing Wuxin's eyes gleamed coldly. Song of the White Frost Sword. In an instant, the replicas were all turned into ice sculptures, unable to move. She couldn't kill them, but she could kill them. Boom! Several huge explosions turned into towering flames that engulfed the replicas in one fell swoop. Amidst the terrifying flames, the replicas could be vaguely seen struggling, but they couldn't escape. They were all burned and melted into nothingness, leaving behind a ground full of spiritual liquid and 10 drops of blood. Oh yeah, completely destroyed. Gongsun Wuxie crawled up and giggled. Deputy Region Master Zhao's expression changed drastically, and he panicked again. Without the replicas, who could deal with Bing Wuxin? Moreover, there was still the extremely powerful heavens-made divine crossbow. Jinmu's face was gloomy, full of murderous intent. The words he spat out were also very sinister. The replicas I've painstakingly collected. How do you intend to compensate me? If you die, I won't have to compensate you, right? Bing Wuxin said coldly. The first sword flew out and turned into ice, covering Jinmu with ice and snow. His body quickly turned into an ice sculpture. However, Bing Wuxin did not relax. Instead, she stared at the ice sculpture, and a serious look gradually appeared on her face. Petty tricks. Jinmu, who had turned into an ice sculpture, could actually still speak. His body shook, and the icicles on his body were shaken off, revealing his unscathed body. Be careful. There was something wrong with him. Proud Heaven's sword technique. Bing Wuxin shouted in a low voice. The second sword turned into a remnant light and swiftly attacked Jinmu. Jinmu did not dodge. Instead, he slowly closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, a murderous aura surrounded him, and his entire aura had changed. It became more profound, more fierce, and more awe-inspiring. A bunch of ants, forcing me to personally take action. Jinmu's eyes gradually shone with a faint greenish-blue color. A terrifying aura erupted from within him. Su Yu's heart moved, and he used his soul eyes to investigate. His expression changed instantly. Be careful. Some mechanism in his body has been activated. Previously, when Su Yu had seen through his body, he had not noticed anything. But now, he clearly discovered that there was actually a tiny, hidden space in his body. The space had always been in a sealed state, which was why his soul eyes had not detected it. Now that he had opened it, he finally discovered some clues. From the space, a green stone slab appeared slowly. 2 crystals were embedded in the center of the stone slab. Su Yu fixed his gaze on them, and he could not help but be moved. Top-grade crystals. The 2 crystals were extremely rare, top-grade crystals, and even the Red Blood Palace only had 3 of them. One of the crystals was very dim, and more than half of the pure spiritual energy contained within it had been consumed. As for the other crystal, it was in a dormant state and had never been used. At the moment, the dim crystal was being consumed at an accelerated rate, and it was crazily instilling extremely pure energy into the green stone slab. Jinmu's aura became more and more profound. Right at that moment, Bing Wuxin's remnant light attacked him. Clang! However, when the sword, which could cut even a 9th-grade almighty into pieces, struck Jinmu's body, it was as if it had struck an all-creation old monster. Not only did it fail to cut open the surface of his body, but the remnant light was also bounced back, and it turned into a sword shadow once again. With a whimper, it returned to Bing Wuxin's back. Bing Wuxin's bright eyes were grave. His body has become tougher. No, it's his physical body that has been strengthened, and it's not much different from the peak of the Almighty. Based on her intuition, her opponent's physical body had become extremely powerful. Gongsun Wuxie snorted. Watch me. She strapped the heavens-made divine crossbow and shot it at him. A golden brilliance flew toward Jinmu in the blink of an eye like a shooting star, and it exploded loudly. The scorching flames burned the space, and even the void was trembling. However, the silhouette in the raging flames stood on the same spot, unscathed. 2 ancient spiritual bodies, and a replica of the heavens-made divine crossbow. In the raging flames, Jinmu's voice was like that of an evil spirit. It was extremely sinister. Today, none of you can escape. Swish! All of a sudden, the remnant shadow and the raging flames disappeared. Bing Wuxin shouted in a deep voice, "Oh no! Everyone be careful!" As soon as she finished speaking, a black remnant shadow appeared behind Bing Wuxin like a ghost. By the time Bing Wuxin realized it, it was already too late. A pitch-black fist with a terrifying momentum was bombarding the back of her head. The force was enough to shatter Bing Wuxin's head. Bing Wuxin was alarmed, and the two sword shadows behind her vibrated ceaselessly. The moment the fist approached, they were unsheathed and placed before the back of Bing Wuxin's head. Crack! The two sword shadows were repelled, but they had also neutralized most of the fist's force. Bing Wuxin's body leaned forward to avoid being hit in the vital areas, and she took the punch with her back. Wah! Even so, Bing Wuxin was heavily injured by the punch. Her mouth was red, and she tumbled forward a few times. Su Yu's face turned grave. "Wuxia, you hold the line." When he finished speaking, he turned into a gust of wind and flew over, holding the heavily injured Bing Wuxin in his arms to prevent her from falling to the ground and injuring herself again. "Don't worry about me. Take Wuxia and leave quickly. Go back to the faction to save them," Bing Wuxin said, struggling to free herself from Su Yu's embrace. Su Yu didn't reply, and his eyes were fixed on Jimu. He was infusing vital energy into Bing Wuxin with one hand to dredge her damaged internal energy channels. He said, "You're already injured, so leave the rest to me. You go to Wuxia's side." Su Yu helped her up and gave her a light push. Then he looked at Jimu. Jimu stopped in his tracks and grinned coldly. Even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. You could have escaped, but you chose to come back to die. How foolish. Su Yu's expression was calm, and he said, "If I were you, I wouldn't make sarcastic remarks. Instead, I would consider whether I can leave this place alive." Wisps of cold light flickered in the depths of his eyes. "Hee, you dare to boast shamelessly? It would be better if Mo Tianxian came here herself." Jimu sneered. "Fine, I'll take all of your blood essence first." Swoosh! Jinmu's speed was extremely fast, surpassing the divine master realm. It was comparable to the teleportation of an all-creation old monster. Su Yu couldn't catch Jinmu's figure with his naked eyes. He teleported behind Su Yu and struck the back of Su Yu's head, killing him with a single strike. Su Yu's naked eyes couldn't follow him, but his soul eyes were extremely sensitive, and he immediately detected Jinmu's teleportation. He made a prompt decision, and the 5 pulse primordial waves appeared on the surface of his body. At the same time, a green spiritual ruler appeared behind his head. The green spiritual ruler was extremely intelligent, and it automatically determined the fist's target and blocked it in advance. Bang! With a dull thud, the green spiritual ruler was sent flying, and hideous cracks appeared on its surface. Su Yu's heart ached. This was the magical treasure that had accompanied him since the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion, the 6th directional ruler. It was a pity that it was destroyed just like that. Jinmu's fist was ferocious, and it was only blocked for a moment before it continued its attack. When it came into contact with the 5 pulse primordial waves, there was a momentary obstruction. However, the 5 pulse primordial waves could only defend against 6th grade almighty attacks at best. Jinmu's fist surpassed the almighty level and was comparable to mighty force. The 5 pulse primordial waves shook for a moment before collapsing on its own. It seemed like Su Yu was about to suffer a fatal blow, and he had no more strength to defend himself. Gongsun Wuxia and Bing Wuxin were shocked at the same time, and they both attacked. However, Jimu didn't even look at them. With a deep, cold smile, he struck towards Su Yu's head. Right at that moment, Su Yu finally gained some time to react. His left eye shone with a purple radiance. Time acceleration. The time around Su Yu was accelerated by several times, and Jinmu's lightning-fast punch seemed extremely slow in Su Yu's eyes. They were separated by a great distance, so Bing Wuxin and Gongsun Wuxia shouldn't be able to detect the effect of the power of time. However, he only had 3 breaths time, and he only had one chance to accelerate the power of time within a short period of time. He only had one chance to kill Jinmu. Su Yu's eyes shone as he stared at the green stone slab in Jinmu's body. He flicked his fingers continuously, and the silk danced in the air, cutting open Jinmu's abdomen and entering his body. As long as the green stone slab was destroyed, Jinmu could be killed completely. Otherwise, he would most likely end up like the replicas from before, which were almost equivalent to an immortal body. the silk flashed past and was about to cut the green stone slab into two halves and destroy it. However, all of a sudden, the green stone slab seemed to have sensed something, and the dull top-grade crystal flew away from it, blocking the silk head-on. Creak! An obscure, ear-piercing sound was heard, and the top-grade crystal was cut open. However, the top-grade crystal was unusually sturdy, and the cutting time was delayed for a moment. The green stone slab fled into the void again and was about to escape. Humph! Suyu snorted coldly, and the silk immediately penetrated the green stone slab. Fresh blood gushed out of the green stone slab, as if it was some kind of living creature. Suyu could split the green stone slab into two and destroy it with a single movement of his fingers. All of a sudden, the green stone slab trembled violently, and a terrifying aura erupted from it. The strength of the aura surpassed the all-creation's mighty force, and it was the mortal fairy's strength. The moment the aura appeared, the silk was blown away. At the same time, the mortal fairy's strength rushed out of Jinmu's body along the silk and headed straight for Suyu. The moment the energy appeared, the dark clouds in the sky rolled, and the whole world trembled. Even the inner sanctum could feel the terrifying energy descending upon them. Suyu was like a moth facing a giant mountain that was crashing down on him. The feeling of having nowhere to hide and of imminent destruction made Suyu shudder with fear. Chapter 952. Time Freeze. At this critical juncture, Suyu had to reveal more of his magical powers. A purple flying dragon flew out of Suyu's left eye, binding the area in front of him and freezing time. The spiritual energy of the world, the white clouds, and everything else were frozen in time as if they had been moved to another time and space. Even Jinmu was frozen in place, unable to move. However, in the frozen time, there was an aura of supremacy that was unaffected. The mortal fairy's strength was only slightly slowed down, but it was not restricted by the frozen time. The same scene had happened when the Central Prefecture's King's projection first appeared. His understanding of the power of time was not profound enough to shake the mortal fairy's strength. The only fortunate thing was that the mortal fairy's strength was very weak and slowed down. Suyu had enough time to react. The fiery red wings on his back spread out, and he moved immediately. At the same time, he took out 5 round balls and threw them into the sky, trapping Jinmu in the center. Poof! The mortal fairy's strength brushed past Suyu and shot straight into the sky. Wherever the mortal fairy's strength passed, a long crack appeared in the sky and reached the depths of the starry sky. The vast power penetrated the sun, moon, and stars, pierced the sky of the Jojo continent, and shook the surroundings. The Red Blood Palace was in an uproar. From the ordinary students to the higher-ups of the inner sanctum, everyone was shocked. Suyu, who was 1,000 feet away, felt like he was brushed past by a giant ship. The strong airflow produced was like a torrent, pushing Suyu thousands of miles away. His body was in severe pain, and his insides were shaking. His throat was full of blood. His clothes were also torn and tattered from the violence. Suyu felt a lingering fear as he felt the remaining destructive power in the air. Staring at Jinmu, Suyu was lost in thought. What kind of slate was that? How could the mortal fairy's strength be hidden in it? Intuition told Suyu that he could not give the green slate a chance to unleash its full power. Otherwise, if the mortal fairy's strength was released again, no one could stop it. Meteor light stream formation. Suyu flew over and bellowed while Jinmu was still frozen in time. All of a sudden, the 5 round balls revolved rapidly with Jinmu as the center. They produced powerful airflows that formed a vortex-like existence that sucked in all directions. Jinmu, who was in the vortex, finally came into contact with the seal. His mind was filled with shock. What divine ability is that? He couldn't understand what technique Suyu had just used. His body couldn't budge, and it was as if he had been frozen by some supreme power. Only his mind was still spinning. He knew many ancient spiritual bodies and knew all kinds of magical powers like the back of his hand. However, He couldn't match the magical powers displayed by Suyu. Suyu did not reply. He slowly closed his eyes, weaved signs with both hands, and activated the meteor light stream formation. Have a good taste of the spell that you have given me. Jinmu was surrounded by an extremely strong air pressure. Even though his body had been strengthened, it was still difficult for him to move. Humph, humph. The might of the meteor light stream formation depends on the round pearl of the formation. Unless you take out a semi-manufactured celestial artifact, do you think you can shake me? Jinmu sneered coldly and strode forward forcefully. He stared fixedly at Suyu like a ferocious beast that had been trapped and was about to break free. The killing intent in his eyes was unabashed. Is that so? Suyu asked calmly. As he suddenly pressed his palm down, the 5 round pearls quickly pressed down and started shrinking. In no time, they shrank from 1,000 feet in diameter to 30 feet in size. The suction force suddenly increased by dozens of times. Jinmu's whole body was suppressed by the strong air pressure, and he was fixed in place, motionless. Even opening his mouth to speak was extremely difficult for him. I want to see how long you can last. Bang. Finally, the 5 round pearls descended. The first one bombarded Jinmu's body. However, it was like an egg striking a rock. With a cracking sound, it shattered into powder on the spot. Shortly after, the second one collided with him, and it also shattered into pieces. The third one, the fourth one. There were no exceptions. In the face of Jinmu's strong body, the semi-manufactured spiritual artifact was so fragile that it couldn't withstand a single blow. Only the last round pearl was left. It couldn't spin by itself, and it couldn't form a strong air pressure to suppress Jinmu. Jinmu regained some of his ability to move. He grinned and revealed a cruel look. How do you think I should deal with you? Bang! At that moment, the last round pearl came crashing toward him. Jinmu wanted to dodge it, but he couldn't do so because of the lingering air pressure. With a cold snort, Jinmu didn't even look at it. He raised his hand and struck it. However, as soon as his palm came into contact with the pearl, Jinmu was surprised. He had a vague feeling that something was amiss. It was only when an overwhelming force pierced through his arm and shattered it into pieces of flesh and blood that his expression changed. Realizing that something was amiss, Jinmu turned his head to look. In his haste, he discovered that this round pearl was completely different from the other 4. He couldn't tell its grade at all. In just a moment, the round pearl bombarded the surface of Jinmu's body with an unstoppable force. Bang! A bone-chilling sound of bones shattering reverberated throughout Jinmu's body. His strengthened body, which surpassed the divine master realm, was like a piece of paper under the impact of the round pearl. Cracks appeared on his body. Then, with a muffled sound, he was completely flattened. Boom! With a violent rumble, Jinmu was flattened to the ground. As the underworld pearl fell to the ground, the land within a radius of 1,000 forests trembled violently. The powerful impact caused by the collision broke through the trees within 1,000 miles. Hundreds of thousands of giant trees and crushed stones were sent flying into the sky. The spectacular scene amazed Bing Wuxin and Gongsun Wuxia, who were watching from the sidelines. Bing Wuxin stared at the underworld pearl and fell into deep thought. This pearl is so familiar. Well, have I seen it before? Or have I heard of it? Sister Wuxin, watch out. Someone's ambushing you. Suddenly, Bing Wuxin heard Gongsun Wuxia's anxious voice. Before Bing Wuxin could react, the back of her head was struck hard. Her vision darkened. Coupled with her severe injuries, she fell to the ground. Behind her, besides Gongsun Wuxia, was there anyone else who was ambushing her? Sister Wuxin, I'm sorry. I can't let you discover Brother Suyu's secret, Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile as she retracted her fair and tender hand and lifted Bing Wuxin up. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a massive crater with a diameter of dozens of miles was revealed on the ground. Within the crater, magma was everywhere. Amidst the raging flames, a shattered body was firmly pressed down by the underworld pearl, unable to move. That person was Jinmu. Half of his body was crushed under the underworld pearl and had turned into mush. The other half of his body that was exposed was full of cracks. Lad, this is the treasure of the ghost prison's great emperor, the underworld pearl. Why? Why is it in your hands? Jimu opened his mouth with great difficulty. Not only was his body crushed, but the green stone slab in his body was crushed as well, causing it to be unable to function. Chapter 953. The green stone slab in your body is very strange. It seems like it's the most important part of your body, Suyu said as he stared at Jinmu. In fact, Jinmu's body wasn't that special. The green stone slab in his body was the strangest. It could strengthen him to a level surpassing the almighty level in a short time. Moreover, Suyu noticed that the green stone slab had only used one crystal. The second crystal was in a dormant state. If the two crystals were activated at the same time, Jimu would undergo a second drastic change. By then, Suyu might not be able to deal with him. Ha, so what if you know? Jimu laughed hideously. If you dare touch me, I believe you'll regret it, because you don't know who you're making an enemy of. How could Suyu not know? That familiar mortal fairy's strength belonged to none other than the Central Prefecture's king. He was the most powerful and terrifying prefecture's king among the 9 great prefecture's kings. Who I'm making an enemy of has nothing to do with you. Let me see what you're hiding. Suyu used his transparent eye and scanned his body again. The green stone slab was pressed down, and a small part of its body was about to enter the space within his body. Suyu narrowed his eyes and stared at the small space crack. He smiled coldly. If I'm not mistaken, your soul is hiding in this space, right? Jinmu's intelligence was so high that he didn't seem like a puppet without a soul or spiritual intelligence. The only explanation was that his soul had hidden itself, and Suyu hadn't discovered it yet. Upon hearing this, Jinmu's pupils constricted. Anxiety flickered in the depths of his eyes. He secretly used his physical strength to try to shift the underworld pearl away, but he couldn't do anything. At the same time, the green stone slab in his body started to tremble slightly under the control of a thought. Wisps of pure spiritual energy were slowly and arduously injected into the green stone slab. Jimu's body surface changed again. An even more majestic aura was brewing in the depths of his body. Humph! Even now, he still wanted to resist. A wine-red light flashed in the depths of Suyu's red right eye. A wave of space energy was forcefully extended into the small space. What are you doing? Jinmu's face fell. He immediately used his thoughts to seal the space. However, because of the green stone slab, the space was stuck and couldn't be closed. Suyu's space energy went straight in without any obstruction, and all the things within the space were swept out. A red light flashed in front of Suyu's chest, and a purple, sapling-like soul was engulfed by the space energy. There really is a soul, Suyu said coldly. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the reincarnation light revolved in his eyes. He took the man into his space soul. He was prepared to torture him there and interrogate him about his origins. However, Jimu seemed to have encountered something extremely horrifying. He yelled in shock, "Stop! Stop right now! Put me back into space, or I will—" Puff! Before he could finish, a raging flame appeared in his body, igniting the entire sapling. After a shrill scream, the sapling was reduced to nothingness. Suyu's eyelids twitched, and he retreated vigilantly. He then asked coldly, "Did you set a detection seal in his body, and once he leaves this space, the seal will automatically activate and destroy him? Is the Central Prefecture's king really behind him?" Suyu was just guessing, and he was not completely sure. After all, the Heavenly Knife region belonged to the Central Prefecture, and there was only one mortal fairy. When the flame energy dissipated, Suyu felt that it was a pity. Jimu knew a lot about the mastermind behind the scenes and many cultivation techniques. If he could force him to ask questions, he would surely gain a lot. Suyu sighed and looked at Jinmu, who was trapped. Having lost his soul, the green stone slab in Jinmu's body stopped working, and the 2 crystals went silent. Suyu was delighted. It seemed like the green stone slab could only be operated by the soul's will. If he could get a reliable soul and give him the green stone slab, and then find a reliable body, Wouldn't he be like a tiger that had grown wings? Activating one crystal already had such power. If both crystals were activated at the same time, even an all-creation strong man would not be able to do anything to him. Without hesitation, Suyu put away Jinmu's divine body along with the green stone slab. He looked in the direction of the Red Blood Palace and immediately flew to Gongsun Wuxia's side. Looking at the unconscious Bing Wuxin, Suyu was surprised. Her injuries are so severe. You can say that if you count my palm strike. Gongsun Wuxia giggled. Suyu was grateful that Gongsun Wuxia had gone to great lengths to keep his secret. Hey, she's unconscious now. Do you want to get close to her? This is a rare opportunity, Gongsun Wuxia said, patting Bing Wuxin's plump buttocks. Suyu shook his head. Am I that kind of person? What a pity. Sister Wuxin is focused on the path of swords, and she won't develop feelings for anyone. If you don't do it now, you won't get a chance when she's awake. Gongsun Wuxia shrugged. Suyu was speechless, and his eyes turned sharp. Let's leave quickly. I believe the higher-ups of the Red Blood Palace have noticed the commotion just now. Let's leave quickly. Gongsun Wuxia did not want to expose the secret that she had participated in the war, so she nodded and followed Suyu to return to the faction. Before long, a crack appeared in the space, and Mo Tunxian stepped out, standing above the pit of flames. Looking at the devastated surroundings, she raised her brows slightly. What a powerful force. Is it the mortal fairy's strength? Her eyes were filled with doubt. The mortal fairy's strength had appeared near the Red Blood Palace, which was no small matter. Before long, many elders of the inner sanctum had rushed over. The great palace master of the outer sanctum had also rushed over. You guys investigate the vicinity and see if there are any clues left behind, Mo Tianxian instructed, staring at the pit with a suspicious gleam in the depths of her eyes. An hour later, the elders gathered together once again. What have you found? Mo Tianxian asked. The great palace master of the outer sanctum was the first to speak. He stared at the pit below and said, according to measurements, the source of this fluctuation should be a pearl-like treasure, and the place where it fell has some residual aura of the Ghost Clan. It's very likely to be the underworld pearl. Mo Tianxian nodded. She could tell that too. The only underworld pearl in the Jojo continent was in the hands of that ruthless, demonic man. He had been here. Is there anything else? Mo Tianxian asked. Master Ghost of the Inner Sanctum held a few drops of dried blood and emerald green liquid in his palm. He said, this is a fusion product of a very powerful essence blood and some kind of moo's spiritual liquid. It was destroyed by a powerful flame. Judging from the moo's aura, it's very similar to the mysterious moo that Deputy Region Master Xiao brought here. His eyes shone with shrewdness. Palace Master, I think they came here for another purpose other than to challenge us. All the elders present agreed with this point. They had also found the broken pieces of Deputy Region Master Zhao's body. But what they couldn't explain was why they were here and fighting with that ruthless demonic man. Judging from the remains of the battlefield, they should have been killed by that ruthless demonic man. Mo Tianxian pondered for a moment, Suyu's figure lingering in her mind. She thought about it carefully. Wherever the ruthless demonic man appeared, there would be traces of Suyu sooner or later. Now, the ruthless demonic man appeared near the Red Blood Palace, and Jimu and Deputy Region Master Xiao happened to have a grudge against Suyu. Mo Tianxian wouldn't believe that it was a coincidence. Chapter 954. After a moment of silence, Mo Tianxuan's eyes shone. It won't be so easy to deceive me. Soon, the people of the Red Blood Palace left. A soul slowly emerged from the depths of the earth. Who else could it be but Deputy Region Master Xiao? When Jinmu was fighting with his opponent, he hid himself completely, even hiding his aura. That was how he survived. Looking at the horrifying scene of devastation around him, Deputy Region Master Xiao was shocked. Jinmu was killed. In order to hide, he didn't dare to look outside. Did Mo Tianxian do it herself? This was the only possibility he could think of. Gritting his teeth, Deputy Region Master Xiao flew toward the Heavenly Knife region. I hope the Region Master won't punish me too much. After losing the competition and killing the mysterious Jinmu, Deputy Region Master Zhao's mood was extremely heavy. At the Demon Mountain, Suyu searched Jinmu's body and found many good things. For example, the juice of the evil ghost grass could grow into strong vines that could entangle enemies at critical moments. There were 7 or 8 drops in total, and Suyu gave 3 to Gongsun Wuxia. Hee. There's something fun to play with Brother Shanian's poison. Hee. Gongsun Wuxia smiled like a little devil. Suyu gave way subconsciously when he heard that. Continuing to search, Suyu found a piece of essence wood, which was used in the previous challenge. Suyu's eyes lit up. He had extracted the fountain of life from that piece of essence wood, so he could probably extract a lot from this one as well. After searching for a while, there was nothing valuable left on Jinmu's body. What was left was the most important thing inside his body. Waving his sleeves, Suyu cut open Jinmu's body completely. After cutting it open, he found that Jinmu's body wasn't made of a living creature, but was simply made of wood. In other words, Jinmu was actually an artificially created puppet. After cutting open his body, Suyu found the green stone slab inside. Without anyone operating it, the green stone slab and the 2 top-grade crystals were in a state of deep sleep. Suyu picked it up. In view of the mortal fairy's strength that erupted from it, Suyu didn't imbue it with vital energy carelessly. Instead, he put it away and prepared to ask Yunyazi. Gongsun Wuxia stared at the green stone slab and the 2 top-grade crystals. Top-grade crystals! These are good things that can only be found by chance. In fact, she was not short of top-grade crystal stones. She was just sighing. For safety's sake, I won't take these 2 for now. Here's a fire-attributed crystal. You can have it. Suyu took out a fiery red high-grade crystal, which he had taken from the Golden Light Guard's spatial ring. There were 3 of them in total. In this battle, without Gongsun Wuxia's help, it would be very difficult to kill Jinmu, so gifting him a top-grade crystal was nothing. Gongsun Wuxia didn't take it. She rolled her eyes and said with a faint smile, "Where's your fiancée? Should we give it to her?" "Not for now," Suyu said. He only had this many top-grade crystals, and given their current relationship, it wasn't worth handing them over to Bing Wuxin. Gongsun Wuxia's eyes lit up. "Really?" Suyu nodded. Then I'll take it." Gongsun Wuxia grabbed it and played with it in her palm, as if she had obtained her beloved treasure. She found a necklace out of nowhere, embedded the crystal on it, and wore it around her neck. "Aren't you going to use it for cultivation?" Suyu asked curiously. Gongsun Wuxia said, "This is a token of love that brother Suyu gave me. How can I use it for cultivation?" Suyu was speechless when he heard that. "Besides, it's useless even if you give it to me to cultivate," Gongsun Wuxia said casually. "There's the elixir of immortality in my body, so my cultivation will always remain at the time when I swallowed the fairy herb. No matter how much I cultivate, it's useless." Suyu was suddenly enlightened. He had known about this in the desolate, evil jungle. What he didn't know was that Gongsun Wuxia was now a 9th-grade fairy. Didn't that mean that she had the cultivation of a 9th-grade fairy when she was 10 years old? What kind of talent was that? Suyu secretly clicked his tongue. Gongsun Wuxia, who was usually mischievous and playful, was the monster with the strongest aptitude in the Demon Mountain. As if she knew what Suyu was going to say, Gongsun Wuxia raised her snow-white neck. I was also a famous genius girl in the past." Suyu thought about it and asked, "Is there no way to neutralize the elixir?" Gongsun Wuxia's face darkened. "Yes, but I can't be sure. It's more likely to be the fountain of life and the original treasure left in the glittering jewel wonderland, the glittering jewel fairy scepter. So you could rule out the fountain of life. Unless it was the tree goddess's fountain of life, it would be impossible to neutralize the elixir. What is the glittering jewel fairy scepter?" Suyu asked. A glimmer of hope lit up in Gongsun Wuxia's eyes. It's a treasure used by the glittering jewel mortal fairy. It's said to be an Emperor-based Saint artifact replica with purifying power. Maybe it can neutralize the elixir in my body. An Emperor-based Saint artifact replica? Suyu had several Emperor-based Saint artifacts in his hands, so he knew how incredible they were. Maybe they could really neutralize the elixir. "So, you're trying so hard to earn merit points in exchange for the right to enter the glittering jewel wonderland? Suyu asked. Gongsun Wuxia nodded. Yes, my father doesn't want me to enter the glittering jewel wonderland. He doesn't support me, so I have to rely on myself. The glittering jewel wonderland was a place where the heroes of the Jiuzhou continent gathered. Naturally, it was also the graveyard of fallen geniuses. Countless talented experts had died in the glittering jewel wonderland. Gongsun Wuxia entered the glittering jewel wonderland rashly, without any protection. It was extremely risky. As a father, he would rather his daughter stay like this for the rest of her life than risk her life. Suyu asked, when will the glittering jewel wonderland open? How long do we have to wait? Gongsun Wuxia said, the exact time should be 2 months and 3 days later. This is the result calculated by the 9 great prefectures' kings. That day is the day when the glittering jewel wonderland will reappear in the land of Jiuzhou. Once the glittering jewel wonderland descends, the outstanding young geniuses of the great factions will be sensed, and they will go to the wonderland. Suyu furrowed his brows. Do you mean that any talented and outstanding person will be sensed? If that's the case, what's the point of fighting for 4 million merit points? Gongsun Wuxia shook her head. There is. All the talented experts of the continent will gather there. If there's no order, what do you think will happen? Suyu pondered for a moment, then said, the wonderland hasn't even opened, but blood will flow like a river. Gongsun Wuxia said, that's right. That's why the glittering jewel wonderland has already set a rule that only the recommendation of an all-creations expert is qualified to enter. Many geniuses who want to enter will seek the protection of an all-creations old monster, and those who are protected by an all-creations old monster are all mediocre people. As a result, the mediocre people are rejected, and only the truly powerful geniuses can further their studies. Such a move was extremely unfair to the mediocre people. However, it was extremely beneficial to the overall strength of the Jiuzhou continent. If everyone participated in the glittering jewel wonderland, it would only result in the mediocre people joining forces to kill the outstanding ones and occupy the quota. Chapter 955. Although there will be disputes among the all-creation's old monsters, it's much better than a chaotic situation, Gongsun Wuxia added. In fact, the more outstanding a genius was, the more powerful the all-creation's old monsters' protection would allow them to enter the glittering jewel wonderland more safely. This was also a kind of protection for outstanding geniuses. Suyu said, in that case, Palace Mistress Mo will lead us there and recommend us. If it was her, few all-creation's old monsters would dare to provoke her in the entire Jiuzhou continent. Are only all-creation's old monsters allowed to recommend? What if the prefecture's kings and the severed fairy cliff master come? Suyu asked. Gongsun Wuxia said, no, the glittering jewel wonderland has a suppressive power. Mortal fairies can't get within 1,000,000 miles of the wonderland and will be excluded. Even though the glittering jewel mortal fairy has fallen many years ago, she is still the oldest mortal fairy in the Jiuzhou continent. She has lived for tens of thousands of years. Even after her death, her remaining power is not something that the 9 great prefectures' kings can resist. Suyu had heard many rumors about the glittering jewel mortal fairy, so he respected this ancient mortal fairy. He respected the humans who had protected the Jiuzhou continent for tens of thousands of years and had not forgotten about Jiuzhou even after their deaths. In 2 months and 3 days, there will be many experts and heroes. Suyu's eyes shone brightly. These were the top geniuses he knew. There was Gu Taishu, the top genius of the blessed and heavenly lands. Bai Lingtian, the top genius of the heavenly knife region. There were 45 regions in the whole of Jiuzhou. There were at least 45 peerless geniuses. Each of them was powerful and almost invincible among their peers. How could it be easy to compete with them? If he didn't make sufficient preparations in 2 months, even if he entered the glittering jewel wonderland, he would not be able to compete with them, let alone help Gongsun Wuxia get the glittering jewel fairy scepter. Moreover, Yun Yazi hoped that Suyu would take away the relic that the glittering jewel mortal fairy had left for him. Without absolute power, it would be difficult to succeed. He had to improve his cultivation quickly. I'm going to go into seclusion for the next 2 months, Gongsun Wuxia said, her eyes shining like a pair of bright candles. As she spoke, Gongsun Wuxia suddenly said, "Oh, by the way, my aunt said that 500 portions of 5th grade almighty vital energy have been prepared and are on their way. I believe that they will be delivered to you in 2 months." Su Yu's eyes lit up. Is it finally coming? He held a large piece of the glittering jewel mortal fairy's divine crystal in his hand, which contained a part of her memory. He would need an enormous amount of vital qi to unlock it. 500 portions of 5th grade almighty vital energy were more than enough. At that time, it would be best if he could obtain something from it. It just so happens that I'm also preparing to go into secluded cultivation, Su Yu said. However, Su Yu still hadn't decided where he would go into seclusion. The illusory combat rooms were already packed to the brim. Every once in a while, they would have to give up on their cultivation to inject contribution points into their bodies, making it impossible for them to cultivate for long periods of time. It was at this moment that Bing Wuxin woke up from her unconsciousness. She looked at the two people who were talking face to face and asked, "Where's Jinmu?" Gongsun Wuxia had a guilty conscience, so she laughed and said, "Oh, I've already been eliminated by Brother Yuxian. I've avenged you." Bing Wuxin scratched the back of her head and asked, "Then who attacked me?" "It was Deputy Region Master Xiao. That guy is too treacherous." Gongsun Wuxia ran over to Bing Wuxin and massaged her shoulders. She then said fiercely, "He unexpectedly attacked both of us while we were distracted. It's fortunate that I discovered it early and blocked most of the attacks." Bing Wuxin was slightly confused. Wasn't he beaten until only his soul body was left? How could he still launch such an attack? Yes, he must have taken his medicine, Gongsun Wuxia said with certainty. Bing Wuxin mulled it over for a moment and didn't pay too much attention to it. She was just about to stand up when she noticed the necklace on Bing Wuxin's neck out of the corner of her eye. "A high-grade, fire-element crystal? Where did you get it?" "Brother Yuxian gave it to me." It was unknown whether Gongsun Wuxia had done it intentionally, but her eyes were flickering with a strange light. It seemed like she was showing off, but it also seemed like she was secretly provoking her. Upon hearing this, Bing Wuxin looked at Su Yu and asked, "Do you know how precious a high-grade crystal is? Even our faction only has a few of them." Su Yu replied, "I know. So what?" Bing Wuxin didn't know why, but a sense of injustice welled up in her heart, and it weighed heavily on her chest. Why did he give it to Gongsun Wuxia, but not her? He had even given her 3 million merit points, and he clearly had feelings for her. So, why was he fawning over another girl? Or was he still in love with Gongsun Wuxia? The more Bing Wuxin thought about it, the more she couldn't calm herself down. She looked at the high-grade crystal on Gongsun Wuxia's neck and felt like someone had snatched it from her. However, she had been with Gongsun Wuxia for many years, so she quickly suppressed her anger. She stood up and discreetly pushed away Gongsun Wuxia's hand, then said coldly, "I'm going back to treat my injuries. It just so happens that I'm going into secluded cultivation. Let's meet again in 2 months." After she spoke, she walked away coldly. Gongsun Wuxia looked at Bing Wuxin's back and said with a faint smile, "Brother Su Yu, congratulations. It seems to me that Sister Wuxin has fallen in love with you." Su Yu shook his head and said, "She's wholeheartedly devoted to the sword path, and her martial heart is very firm. I can feel that such a person won't fall in love easily." "Hee, Brother Su Yu, you don't understand women," Gongsun Wuxia said like a little adult. "Women are very peculiar creatures. No matter how outstanding a man is, if he takes the initiative to give himself to him, it will be difficult to arouse his interest. This is especially the case for Sister Wuxin, who's wholeheartedly devoted to the sword path and has a proud and aloof heart. She won't fall in love easily, and she won't even pay attention to you. However, if she finds out that this person is about to leave her and fall into the arms of another equally outstanding woman, she will start paying attention to this person and discover his merits. I was helping you just now, Brother Su Yu. Otherwise, even if you get married, she won't fall in love with you." It sounded reasonable, but sounded strange coming from Gongsun Wuxia's mouth. She must have fallen in love with Su Yu, but she didn't drive Bing Wuxin away, but instead brought them together. What was her intention? All right, I'm going into secluded cultivation to prepare for the exploration of the glittering jewel wonderland. I have to properly digest the things I've been fiddling with recently. Gongsun Wuxin knew what Su Yu was going to ask, so she deliberately avoided it. She waved her hand elegantly, then returned to her house and went into secluded cultivation. Su Yu was speechless. It seemed like he had to find a suitable time to explain the whole story to them. Just as Su Yu was pondering where he should go into secluded cultivation, two fierce-looking guards barged into the Demon Mountain all of a sudden. They stopped Su Yu and said, "Palace Mistress Mo has ordered you to come with us." Mo Tianxian? Su Yu was annoyed. Could it be that this woman had discovered some clues and was suspecting him again? It seemed like he had to find a way to get rid of her suspicions once and for all. Otherwise, there would be trouble sooner or later. Besides, trouble was right in front of him. Chapter 9:56. Inner Palace. Under the guidance of two guards, Su Yu walked into a great hall in the inner palace. Su Yu was nervous. Under the watchful eyes of the two guards, he braced himself and walked into the tent. If Mo Tianxian really wanted to use force, Su Yu would have no choice but to flee from the Red Blood Palace. However, the glittering jewel wonderland was just around the corner. If he left now, where could he find an all-creations old monster to recommend him to participate in the glittering jewel wonderland? When Su Yu stepped into the palace, Missouri Tianxian wasn't there. Instead, there was a woman dressed in white clothes. She was in her 20s, and her figure was as graceful as a willow. She was slender and soft, and her curves were in all the right places. She was dressed in a pure white robe, like a willow catkin covering her body, giving off a hazy sense of beauty. Taking a closer look, this woman was also extremely beautiful. Her facial features were as exquisite as unpolished jade, and her skin was as smooth as a pebble. At first glance, Su Yu's eyes flashed with amazement, as if he had just caught a glimpse of it. However, upon closer inspection, he could not help but be startled. "Bing Wuxin, why are you here?" Who else could this peerlessly beautiful woman be but Bing Wuxin? Su Yu asked, "Wait, if you aren't Bing Wuxin, then who are you?" This woman looked exactly the same as Bing Wuxin. Even the fine lines on her face were identical. It could be said that they had been carved from the same mold. However, Su Yu felt a sense of unfamiliarity from her. Compared to Bing Wuxin's undisguised iciness, the woman in front of him was as delicate as water, without any sharp aura. If Bing Wuxin was described as a raging flame, then the woman in front of him was the exact opposite. She was as gentle as water, and he could feel her boundless gentleness just by standing beside her. Their completely different temperaments made Su Yu realize that she wasn't Bing Wuxin. Su Yu was very puzzled by the shocking resemblance between the two of them. There were many people in the world who were similar, but to the extent that they were similar to each other made Su Yu extremely puzzled. Su Yu did not find it strange that they were twins who looked extremely similar, as if they were replicas. But if even their spiritual auras were the same, that would be unimaginable. With his transparent eye, the soul that Su Yu saw was no different from Bing Wuxin's. As far as Su Yu knew, there had never been anyone whose soul aura was exactly the same. What was going on? Hearing his voice, the plain-clothed woman slowly turned her body and looked at Su Yu with her watery eyes. She then said with a faint smile, "Are you Su Yuxian? I've heard a lot about you." "Who are you?" Su Yu asked vigilantly. "Where's Palace Mistress Mo?" The plain-clothed woman looked at Su Yu calmly. "It's true that my master summoned you here, and it's also true that I received you." "Master?" Su Yu shifted his gaze. Mo Tianxian had only accepted two disciples. One was an in-name disciple, and the other was a true disciple. Su Yu had seen the registered disciple before, Shangwan Qinger. As for the true disciple, it was the person who was praised as a god, the #1 expert of the Red Blood Palace, Bing Wuxin. He was said to have easily defeated the #1 genius of the blessed and heavenly lands. He was a peerless genius who might stand shoulder to shoulder with Gu Taishu. Bing Wuxin. Su Yu raised his brows, and he couldn't help but size her up in surprise. He had long felt that it was odd that Bing Wuqing and Bing Wuxin's names were so similar, but he didn't expect that even their personalities were the same. The plain-clothed woman pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was like a flower. "It's really her." Suyu looked around, his eyes flickering as he asked, "Do you want to take revenge on me?" During the mission to kill Mo Yang, Bing Wuqing's projection had descended and prevented Master Ghost from handing the mission to Bing Wuxing. Even someone with a high status like Master Ghost had to obey her orders, but Suyu had dared to oppose her directly. As he recalled this, Suyu was speechless. Back then, he had decided to leave the faction without any scruples. Who knew that he would end up returning to the faction by a freak combination of factors? "No," Bing Wuqing said with a smile. Bing Wuqing said with a faint smile. She took a few steps towards Suyu with light and graceful steps, her colorful eyes flickering with a clear light. "If I wanted to harm you, the one standing here would be my teacher, who would search your soul again, and not me." "What do you mean?" Suyu's pupils constricted slightly. This woman could influence Mo Tianquan's will? In any case, those two guards were Mo Tianquan's trusted guards, so it was unlikely that they had been bribed to impersonate Mo Tianxian. "You know what I mean. My master is very suspicious of you, and she wants to search your soul again, but I can dissuade her." Bing Wuqing had already walked to within 30 feet of Suyu. Her refreshing fragrance was like a refreshing orchid in a quiet valley. Bing Wuqing pursed her lips and chuckled. "Of course, I can also dissuade her from searching your soul again." Suyu squinted his eyes and said, "I have a pure body, so I'm not afraid of the soul search." "No, you are." Bing Wuqing's eyes were crystal clear, like a pair of springs that emitted a gentle light. However, Suyu could feel a chill in the depths of his heart from her gentleness. "Is that so?" Suyu snorted coldly. Bing Wuqing took out a scroll with a smile. As she unfurled it, a handsome, silver-haired youth, who looked like a fairy, was depicted on the scroll. Judging from the traces, it seemed like it hadn't existed for a long time. "I got this scroll from an elder of the soul, seizing palace," Bing Wuqing said with a gentle smile. Bing Wuqing said with a smile. There was a profound meaning in her smile. "You must want to know whether that elder is in the Red Blood Palace." Suyu's pupils constricted when he heard this. What he was most worried about had happened. His identity had been exposed. The damned soul seizing palace. Suyu's expression changed, and a cold glint flickered in his eyes. "Since you know who I am, you're still threatening me. Aren't you overconfident? Do you think that I don't dare to, or that I can't?" Bing Wuqing put away the scroll, pursed her lips, and revealed a gentle smile. "Junior brother Su, you are exaggerating. How could I dare to threaten the famous demon paths, Rising Star? I just want to make a deal with you." Suyu said coldly, "Speak." Bing Wuqing walked over to Suyu. She was only half a meter away from him, and they could smell each other's breaths. "It's quite simple. I want you to do something for me, and that is to become my fiancé." Suyu was taken aback, and he asked coldly, "In order to suppress Wuxin?" Bing Wuqing nodded with a faint smile. "That's right. I will take everything that belongs to her, even if it's her fiancé." Suyu laughed. "If that's the case, you don't need to waste so much effort. There's nothing between us, so we can't be considered fiancé." However, Bing Wuqing shook her head. "No, you don't understand Bing Wuxing. Once she has set her mind on something, it will be difficult for her to change her mind. Since she has already said that she will take you as her fiancé, then based on my understanding of her, she will surely keep her word. You will soon become her fiancé." After pondering this for a long while, Suyu found it absurd. Suyu raised his eyes and looked at Bing Wuqing. "What if I refuse? What can you do to me? Or if I want to leave, what can the Red Blood Palace do to me?" If he wanted to escape, there were only a few people in the world who could stop him. Even if Mo Tianxian came here in person, Suyu wouldn't be afraid. Bing Wuqing was as tranquil as ever, and she said with a faint smile, "If you want to leave, then no one can stop you. But you have lost the right to enter the glittering jewel wonderland. I don't think any all-creation old monsters will dare recommend you for the right to enter in the near future." The glittering jewel wonderland. This woman was so meticulous that it made people feel uneasy. She had exposed Suyu's weakness with a single sentence. Yes, if he wanted to leave, he would have left long ago. He had stayed until now for the glittering jewel wonderland. Chapter 9:57. The suggestion was tempting. The soul-seizing palace had colluded with the central prefecture and revealed Su Yu's true appearance, which had aroused Su Yu's killing intent. Su Yu was more than happy to eliminate them. Su Yu had no reason to refuse Bing Wuqing's offer. Bing Wuxin's image appeared in his mind, and he said coldly, "I choose to refuse." Although he didn't know why Bing Wuqing was deliberately suppressing Bing Wuxin, and he didn't know what kind of grudge there was between them, Su Yu instinctively didn't like backstabbing. As for whether he would miss the glittering jewel wonderland because of this, it was highly possible, especially after Su Yu's identity was announced by Bing Wuqing. Everyone knew that Su Yu was the Central Prefecture's king's enemy. Which faction would dare to risk the Central Prefecture's king's wrath and help Su Yu? However, this was the only way Su Yu could feel at ease. Otherwise, what could he do even if he entered the glittering jewel wonderland? "If you want to announce my identity, go ahead," Su Yu said calmly. At this moment, he had already decided to give up the glittering jewel wonderland and leave the Red Blood Palace. However, Su Yu was surprised that Bing Wuqing wasn't disappointed, angry, or even threatening. Instead, she stared at Su Yu meaningfully. "I didn't expect you to make such a decision. It's unexpected, but reasonable." When she finished speaking, she clenched her fist, and the scroll was engulfed by a ball of raging flames, turning into ashes. "What do you mean?" Su Yu's eyes flickered. Bing Wuqing smiled faintly. "It's exactly what you saw. I'll keep it a secret for you." Su Yu stared at her, trying to figure out what she was thinking. Bing Wuxin is really lucky to have found such a fiancé. "I'm really envious," Bing Wuqing said with a smile. She was envious because of Su Yu's true identity, as well as his persistence toward Bing Wuxin. Su Yu asked, "You're giving up just like that?" He didn't quite believe it. "Of course not." Bing Wuqing smiled. "Just because you agreed to be my fiancé doesn't mean I'll let go of an expert like you. I'll change my condition. You don't have to help me suppress Bing Wuxin. You just have to help me achieve the final victory in the glittering jewel wonderland," Bing Wuqing said. With Su Yu's peerless fighting prowess, who had consecutively killed the Blood Emperor and the 5 Golden Light Guards, Bing Wuqing would be invincible in the glittering jewel wonderland if he was willing to help her. Su Yu was deep in thought. If that was the case, he could consider it. "In return, in addition to helping you keep your secret, I'll also provide you with a place to cultivate during this period of time so that you won't be disturbed by anyone and can cultivate in peace," Bing Wuqing said. Su Yu's eyes flickered. "Oh, aren't you going to help me kill every single person from the soul-seizing palace who knows about this?" "Haha, don't tell me you regret not agreeing to the last deal," Bing Wuqing asked in return. Su Yu shook his head calmly. "There are some things that are better done by myself. That way, I will feel more at ease." Upon hearing that, Bing Wuqing pursed her lips and smiled. "I think so too." Her pretty eyes flickered, and she paused for a moment before she said, "Oh, that's right. Let me remind you that the soul-seizing palace's people will converge with the other factions under the jurisdiction of the Red Blood Palace in 2 months, and they will come to our Red Blood Palace. If you don't want to be exposed, you'd better be prepared." Upon hearing this, Su Yu nodded lightly. "I understand." Even if she hadn't reminded him, Su Yu would still have looked for a way to conceal his appearance. There were many experts in the Jiuzhou continent, and there were many geniuses proficient in mysterious techniques. Hence, there might be some people like the soul-seizing palace's master who could see through a person's true age and appearance. Hence, it was imperative that he strengthen the concealment of his identity. This matter could be handled by someone else. This is my personal training ground, and it was prepared by my teacher for me. Apart from me, no one will disturb me. You should cultivate here during this period of time, and you don't need to go back to the outer sanctum." Bing Wuqing threw a purple jade pendant at Su Yu. It contained a map, as well as a whiff of a unique aura. If he carried the jade pendant, he could use its aura to easily pass through certain defensive seals. "I will see you in 2 months, and I look forward to your performance." Bing Wuqing took a deep look at Su Yu before she left with a faint smile. Su Yu was the only one left in the empty hall. As he looked in the direction in which Bing Wuching had left, Suyu couldn't help but furrow his brows. Who is Bing Wuching? Does a trifling disciple like her have the ability to dissuade Mo Tianxian and change her mind about searching my soul? Based on Suyu's experience with her, Mo Tianxian was a person who dared to go against the heart oath ancient scroll at will. She acted without restraint, yet she would unexpectedly listen to a trifling disciple. Moreover, could Bing Wuching really have coincidentally found his restored portrait in the hands of the soul-seizing palace's elder? If that wasn't the case, then Bing Wuching's background was shockingly great. Moreover, what was her relationship with Bing Wuxin? Suyu went toward the training ground given to him by Bing Wuxin. It was only when he went there that he discovered that it was a pyramid-shaped silver magical treasure. Its whole body emitted a shocking spiritual nature, and it seemed like there was a powerful living being within the pyramid. A semi-manufactured fairy artifact? Suyu's pupils contracted slightly. All semi-manufactured fairy artifacts would start brewing spiritual nature, and the stronger the spiritual nature, the more powerful the magical treasures would be. Suyu had a prototype fairy artifact, the 5-elemental strong thunder seal, but it didn't have any spiritual nature at all. This semi-manufactured fairy artifacts could probably rival Gongsun Wuxia's heavens made divine crossbow. Suyu walked into the fairy artifact and found that it had its own space. There were pavilions, terraces, and a small bridge over flowing water. It was a quiet and serene valley. Melodious zither music, which could calm one's mind, drifted into one's ears and cleansed one's soul. The sky was filled with dense spiritual energy, which was several times denser than the outside world. The environment here isn't bad, Suyu thought to himself. The Red Blood Palace had taken out a semi-manufactured fairy artifact for Bing Wuching's cultivation, which showed how important they were to her. There were several pavilions here, and besides the one in the center, which had its defensive seal activated, the others were all empty. Suyu gazed at the central pavilion for a moment, then stepped into the nearest pavilion. The jade pendant on his waist emitted a beeping sound, and the defensive formation was activated by itself after Suyu stepped into the room. Without Suyu's permission, no one could enter. After Suyu entered the room, he immediately put 2 objects in front of him. They were the second and third moves of the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, which he had gotten from the bright light guards. They were the 5 elements divine prison. The former was a fairy-level cultivation technique, and the more one cultivated it, the more powerful it would be. Suyu had already mastered the first move, the Great Moon Palm, and its might couldn't be considered powerful. At least, it wasn't as powerful as Suyu had imagined. In terms of its might, it wasn't even on par with the high-grade legendary cultivation technique, the 9 Dragons Devil Subduing Art. He could only try the second and third moves to see whether they were stronger. As for the 5 elements divine prison, he had already comprehended 90 demon clans' inscriptions, and if he comprehended 10 more, he would be able to comprehend 100 of them. Then, he would be able to control 1/10 of the 5 elements divine prison's might, and he would be able to forcefully imprison even all creation old monsters. Suyu had only 2 months left, and he had to make some progress. After inspecting the surroundings and ascertaining that this place wasn't being monitored, Suyu used time acceleration to comprehend the heaven-extinguishing divine palm and the 5 elements mysteries art at the same time. While he was in secluded cultivation, the Jiuzhou continent's 45 regions were in turmoil. In the northernmost region, a black blazing sun rose from the horizon and covered the 9 heavens, causing the northernmost region to be engulfed by the sun and the moon. If one observed it carefully, one would discover that there was a tall and sturdy youth in black clothes within the black blazing sun. His eyes were filled with divine light, and an imposing aura was emanating from him. It was as if he was a king who ruled the world. Chapter 958. His gaze passed through the black sun and shot in the direction of the Red Blood Palace in the extreme north. Master, you are wrong. Mo Tianxian is also wrong. I'm the only one who is right. His eyes were full of fierceness. 5 horrible auras, like divine lights, penetrated the sky and disappeared into the universe. Those were the auras that shocked the Jiuzhou continent. In the northernmost land, in a wild forest, a young man with a mace on his back was lying on a giant ferocious beast, devouring its flesh and blood. His mouth was full of blood, and he looked extremely ferocious. The giant beast under him was still alive, and its eyes were full of pain and fear. Its giant bloody eyes looked at the weak young man as if he was a ferocious beast of a higher level, even though it was already an all-creation expert. In the easternmost region, a fiery red phoenix streaked across the sky. Everywhere it passed, there were endless, scorching flames. Those were extreme flames that even an all-creation old monster couldn't bear. On the fiery red phoenix, there was a cute girl in blue with bright eyes. She wore a knee-length short skirt and sat on the phoenix with a smile, swinging her legs. The fiery red phoenix, which was full of horrible aura, was very respectful under the girl's feet. In the center of Jiuzhou, in the central prefecture, outside the central prefecture's king's secret chamber, a young man in a golden robe was standing there. His eyes were shining with a strange golden light. "Master, why did you summon me?" The young man in the golden robe asked. As a disciple, he didn't kneel, but stood straight and stared at the door of the secret chamber. There was no respect in his tone. He sounded arrogant, as if he didn't even care about the central prefecture's king. In the secret chamber, the voice of the central prefecture's king came, "Wu Shuang, go to the glittering jewel wonderland. Let Han Xin go. I don't need the treasures of the glittering jewel mortal fairy." The young man, named Wu Shuang, said indifferently with his arms crossed in front of his chest. The central prefecture's king said, "Why not? She is the oldest mortal fairy in the world, and she is more powerful than any mortal fairy in any era." Wu Shuang snorted. "With my talent, it is only a matter of time before I surpass the glittering jewel mortal fairy. Why do I need her relics?" The arrogance of this lad's words made people speechless. He actually dared to say that he could surpass the glittering jewel mortal fairy. There was a moment of silence in the secret chamber. Your strength lies in your unparalleled confidence. If you lose in the future, it will be because of this confidence. Han Xin is in confinement, and she can't leave. You go and fetch the skeleton of the glittering jewel mortal fairy for her, the central prefecture's king said. Upon hearing this, Wu Shuang was displeased. But after thinking for a moment, he agreed. "Fine, I'll go there and take away the most important skeleton of the glittering jewel mortal fairy in front of all the geniuses of Jiuzhou." He had an indescribable madness toward the number one in the world. Heavenly Knife Region. A mysterious person wearing a golden mask appeared. He had a pair of mysterious green eyes that looked like a blooming flower. He stood in front of the bamboo forest, quietly admiring the elegant bamboo garden with his hands behind his back. "Ling Tian, how are your preparations?" A plump man with a shrewd look on his face asked. The golden-masked man turned around. His tone was calm and soothing. "Master, the necessary preparations have been made. All that's left is the glittering jewel wonderland's descent." This man was by Ling Tian, the strongest genius of the Heavenly Knife region. "That's good. I believe you'll gain a lot in the glittering jewel wonderland. I'm looking forward to you succeeding me and becoming the next Heavenly Knife region master." The plump man was none other than the Heavenly Knife region master. Bai Ling Tian chuckled and shook his head. "The Jiuzhou continent is full of experts. Let's not talk about the four great starry sky geniuses. In the West region alone, there are people like Gu Taishu and Bing Wuqing. No one knows their actual strength, but I believe they're not weaker than the starry sky geniuses. Moreover," Bai Ling Tian continued, "Jimu took a drop of my essence blood, a replica with 70% of my power. In the end, he was killed before he could even send a message back. If it was the master of the Red Blood Palace, it would be fine. If it was one of the geniuses of the Red Blood Palace, it would be terrifying. After all, even a Mo Tianxian would be wary of Jinmu's real strength." Upon hearing this, the Heavenly Knife region master looked displeased. Jinmu's death had greatly affected the reputation of the Heavenly Knife region. You can set your mind at ease. It's impossible unless Mo Tianxian did it herself. The Heavenly Knife region master said, The Red Blood Palace only has Bing Wuching to be cautious about. There are no other experts among the younger generation. Bai Ling Tian seemed to be nodding, but then he shook his head. In the blessed and heavenly lands, in the Purple Cloud Palace, an expanse of purple light suddenly shot out from the depths of the Purple Cloud Palace, engulfing a radius of 10,000 miles. Wherever the purple light engulfed, the spiritual energy would be frozen, as if it was frozen. At the same time, 8 mysterious and powerful energies soared into the sky from the depths of the palace. They transformed into the shadows of 8 ancient real spirits in the sky. It was an astonishing sight. All of a sudden, the Purple Cloud Palace was in an uproar. It's our eldest senior brother. His bloodline talent has become even stronger. With the current bloodline power, even in all creation stage 1 old monster's energy might be confined alive and slaughtered. TSK, it's more than that. Didn't you see those 8 shadows? Our eldest senior brother's 9 fairy elixir is only short of the last real spirit's blood, and he'll be able to successfully refine it. Breaking through to the all creations is just around the corner. In the Red Blood Palace, inside the fairy artifact, the courtyard where Su Yu was suddenly radiated with brilliant light. It was as if a blazing sun had suddenly appeared, dazzling and shining in all directions. Within the blazing sun, a silver-haired silhouette was faintly discernible. In an instant, the courtyard melted like snowflakes in the boundless sunlight, turning into nothingness. Unable to withstand the bright sunlight, the defensive restriction formation outside also crumbled. Just as the dazzling light was about to engulf the whole valley and turn the tranquil environment within the fairy artifact into ruins, the silhouette in the blazing sun suddenly opened his eyes. The sunlight in all directions had vanished. The place where Su Yu had been standing had turned into a scene of desolation. The original courtyard was nowhere to be seen. Clap, clap. Gentle applause came from the railing in the central courtyard. Bing Wuching looked over with a smile and said, "The heaven-extinguishing divine palm that the Central Prefecture's king's personal guard mastered has fallen into your hands, and it's the second style, the Sun Divine Palm." Su Yu looked over with cold eyes and ignored her. Anyway, she knew Su Yu's real identity, and she also knew that he had cultivated the Central Prefecture's ultimate technique. After 2 months, Su Yu had managed to comprehend the fairy-level cultivation technique at an accelerated rate of 500 times. Now that he had cultivated the Sun Divine Palm to the entry level, its might was beyond Su Yu's imagination. If he cultivated the Sun Divine Palm to its pinnacle, he would be able to fight a level 4 Divine Master with ease. But if he ran into a level 5 Divine Master, he would be powerless, and if he ran into a level 6 Divine Master, he wouldn't be able to fight at all. However, the Sun Divine Palm's entry level might already surpass that of a level 6 Divine Master, and even a level 7 Divine Master would be turned into ashes by it. So he was quite satisfied with its unexpected might. The only thing he was dissatisfied with was that he couldn't use this cultivation technique at will, due to his status. Chapter 959. Su Yu's eyes shone. "Is that so? Junior brother Su, you don't have to be suspicious. I believe you've come into contact with talisman treasures before," Bing Wuching said. Su Yu had obviously come into contact with talisman treasures before, as the Shao family had once gotten one of Elder Jing's formation-breaking hammer. Once activated, the phantom image of the formation-breaking hammer could be released, containing the true power of the formation-breaking hammer once. However, talisman treasures were very rare. The reason was that the refinement of a talisman treasure was extremely harmful to the magic treasure itself. After refining it many times, the magic treasure would eventually be destroyed. Usually, the magic treasures that were used to refine talisman treasures were things that the martial artist had no use for themselves, or it would be a pity to sell them, but it would be useless if they didn't sell them. That was why he chose to refine it into a talisman treasure. "I know," Su Yu nodded calmly. Bing Wuching said, "That's simple. If you trust me, I can help you refine a talisman treasure for the heaven-extinguishing divine palm. It should be enough for you to use a few times." Cultivation techniques and magical treasures are not the same thing. right? Su Yu raised his doubts. Magic treasures could be refined into talisman treasures, and so could cultivation techniques. Of course you can, but you'll need some special methods. I'm the only one who can do it, Bing Wuqing said. Su Yu thought for a moment, then asked, "What do you want from me?" She had already promised to help her obtain the final victory in the glittering jewel wonderland. What else did she want? Was it to suppress Bing Wuxin? Don't be nervous, it's just a small request. Bing Wuqing's smile was like a spring breeze. Su Yu's gaze flickered. If it is within the acceptable range, of course there is no problem. However, let's first craft 3 talismans. Bing Wuqing nodded with a smile. Then, she took out 3 pieces of white paper from her sleeves. A sharp long sword was depicted on it, emitting a blazing aura. It looked like a sword of fire that was being burned by raging flames. These are 3 incomplete talisman treasures. They have already been used, so they have lost their original shadows. Now, as long as you seal your cultivation method in them, you can use them as talisman treasures. Even if others find out that you used the heaven-extinguishing divine palm, you can say that you bought it from the black market. The talisman treasures of the heaven-extinguishing divine palm are not a secret in the black market, but they rarely appear. Su Yu nodded to show that he understood. Now attack me, Bing Wuqing said. Su Yu hesitated for a moment, but when he thought about his opponent's cultivation, he understood. Although she had never revealed her aura, Su Yu, who had seen many almighty experts, had a clear understanding of it. She was a 9th grade almighty, an absolute power that stood at the peak of the almighty. Okay, be careful. As Su Yu spoke, he immediately used the solar divine palm. Dazzling sunlight condensed in his right hand, and a bright sun rose up slowly like a sun. It engulfed the whole area and quickly suppressed Bing Wuqing. Under the sunlight, all living things melted and were erased from the world. When the sunlight neared Bing Wuqing, she was caught off guard. She stretched out a slender finger and pointed it at the sunlight. A shocking scene appeared. The sunlight that filled the sky suddenly froze, and it was enveloped by a deep blue halo. Su Yu's cultivation technique was also forcefully interrupted. Following that, the sky full of dazzling sunlight, like rivers flowing into the sea, entered the ancient talisman treasure in her palm. Instantly, the talisman treasure was full of spirituality and was filled with powerful spiritual energy. Su Yu witnessed the whole process, and his eyes shone brightly. You can seal cultivation techniques? This was what Bing Wuqing had said, a method that only she could do. There is only one possibility for such a strange talent. Bloodline power. Just like how Bing Wuqing possessed the bloodline of the ancient heavenly sword, Bing Wuqing possessed the bloodline of sealing cultivation techniques. Bing Wuqing just smiled and didn't speak. She signaled for Su Yu to continue. After a short while, the 3 talisman treasures were finished. Bing Wuqing walked over with light steps and wore a faint smile. She placed the 3 talisman treasures on Su Yu's palm and said, "Since the talisman treasures are finished, it's time to fulfill my small request." Su Yu pondered for a moment, then said, "If I feel that it's disadvantageous to me, I can reject it. It's just a small request." "Junior brother Su, you don't need to be nervous," Bing Wuqing said with a smile. "Close your eyes." Su Yu furrowed his brows and hesitated for a moment before he closed his eyes. Bing Wuqing extended her slender finger and tapped the space between Su Yu's brows. It felt warm to the touch, like a piece of warm jade. It was extremely comfortable. "It's done," Bing Wuqing said. Su Yu opened his eyes, which were filled with doubt. Although his eyes were closed, he was still paying attention to Bing Wuqing's every move. Was it just this simple? Su Yu was confused, as Bing Wuqing didn't do anything disadvantageous to him. "Okay, junior brother Su, please go ahead. You don't have much time left," Bing Wuqing said meaningfully. "Don't have much time left?" Su Yu was taken aback. Is the glittering jewel wonderland about to arrive? Farewell. Su Yu cupped his fists at her, then left for the outer sanctum. Bing Wuqing looked at Su Yu with a smile, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. That finger gesture was obviously not an ordinary gesture. After Su Yu left the inner sanctum, he headed straight for the outer sanctum. The outer sanctum and the inner sanctum were separated by a boundless forest. There were many demonic beasts here, and there was no lack of level 9 fairy realm high-grade demonic beasts. Even almighty demonic beasts would occasionally barge in. However, they posed no threat to the current Suyu. Not long after Suyu left the inner sanctum, he suddenly felt a cold wind assaulting him, as if he had been locked onto by an expert. When he looked back, he saw a level 7 almighty youth following closely behind him. He was about 25 years old, and his skin was tanned. His eyes were ferocious, and his whole body emitted a barbaric aura. He seemed like a wild beast that would choose its prey to devour. "Senior brother, why are you following me?" Suyu sized up the youth's attire. It was a blue long skirt, which was unique to the inner sanctum. The dark-skinned youth flew until he was 30 feet away from Suyu, and his powerful aura engulfed Suyu. If he was really just a level 9 fairy, it would be difficult for him to even breathe when he was engulfed by such a barbaric aura, let alone face it directly. However, Suyu had fought even all-creation old monsters more than once. So why would he fear this person's aura? "Are you Suyushian?" the dark-skinned youth asked, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. Their contrast with his tan skin made him seem even colder. Upon hearing his hostile tone, Suyu asked coldly, "Who are you?" The dark-skinned youth sized Suyu up. It was difficult for ordinary people to even speak clearly under his aura, yet Suyu wasn't affected at all. Instead, he questioned him. "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that if you don't want to die, then tell me what happened between you and Junior Sister Bing in her cave abode." The dark-skinned youth questioned him. Suyu stared at him and said, "Is it any of your business?" "Hee, old lad, you are quite arrogant. Do you really think that you can look down on everyone just because you're proficient in some Mu words and have an ancient spiritual body?" The dark-skinned youth sneered. "You do have the right to be arrogant in front of ordinary disciples, but in front of Senior Sister Tianyu, you are nothing." Hearing this, Suyu was startled. He had thought that the dark-skinned youth had come here out of jealousy. However, it turned out that he had come here on Tianyu's orders. What made Suyu speechless was that Tianyu was a woman and belonged to the right palace master's camp. She was the second-ranked genius in the faction. At such a young age, she had cultivated to the level 9 divine master realm and suppressed all outstanding talents. The level 9 divine master realm was a realm that most strong people in the Jiuzhou continent couldn't reach in their entire lives, yet she had. In terms of cultivation alone, she wasn't inferior to Bing Wuqing in the slightest. If Bing Wuqing's reputation hadn't been too resounding and dazzling, Tianyu's reputation wouldn't have been so unknown. Outsiders only knew that the Red Blood Palace had a proud daughter named Bing Wuqing, but they didn't know that there was also a similarly talented Tianyu. It was impossible for Suyu not to know this person's name. Chapter 960. You don't have to doubt my words. It's no secret that Senior Sister Tianyu is one of Junior Sister Bing's lovers, the dark-skinned youth said. "Now, I'll ask you one last time. What happened between you?" Suyu was stunned for a long time. Then, a term came to his mind. Lily. There were actually lilies in this world. His mind was in a mess. "No, I just borrowed Junior Sister Bing's training place," Suyu said. He couldn't bring himself to be jealous of a lily. The dark-skinned youth's face softened. He stared at Suyu and said, "You better not be lying to me." After receiving the confirmation, the dark-skinned youth turned around immediately. It seemed like he wanted to send a message to Tianyu in time. Before leaving, the dark-skinned youth warned again, "This is the first and last warning. Don't have any improper contact with Junior Sister Bing. Otherwise, no one can save you." Suyu shook his head as he watched him leave. He returned to the Demon Mountain with a confused mind. As soon as he entered, he found out that Bai Shanliang had returned from his mission. However, the situation seemed a little unusual. Bing Wuxin and Gongsun Wuxia, who were in seclusion, were also in Bai Shanliang's house. Suyu entered and looked at Bai Shanliang in surprise. Dense green mist was emitting from Bai Shanliang's body, surrounding him. Before even getting close, he could smell the pungent smell of the green mist. A thick, corrosive smell assaulted his senses. Staring at the green mist, Suyu clicked his tongue. A poisonous mist? Suyu activated his soul eyes and his pupils shrank slightly. Inside Bai Shanliang's body, a green liquid was tumbling. The liquid was fusing with his blood. In other words, all of his blood was this liquid. Bai Shanliang, who was usually pale, had a dark green color on his face. At the same time, his eyes were closed, and his whole body was convulsing. He seemed to be in great pain. Bing Wuxin and Gongsun Wuxia stood in front of the bed with solemn faces, their brows furrowed. What happened to senior brother Shanliang? Suyu walked over and asked anxiously. Bing Wuxin glanced at Suyu and did not reply. She looked at Bai Shanliang with a grave expression. Gongsun Wuxia turned her head, anger and sadness on her small face. Brother Shanliang was attacked. Who? Suyu's gaze turned ice cold. In the Red Blood Palace, Bai Shanliang had taken care of Suyu many times, and he could be considered one of his few friends. Gongsun Wuxia used her vital energy to lift Bai Shanliang's robe and reveal his chest. A huge black palm print was visible. The 5 fingers of the black palm were clear, like a ghost claw. The palm print was filled with dense ghost chi. Ghost chi? Did senior brother Shanliang encounter a ghost? Suyu immediately recognized the handprint's origin. It was definitely a ghost. Gongsun Wuxia nodded. Yes, I was attacked by a mysterious all-creations ghost that wanted to control brother Shanliang, but he managed to escape. Bloodbone Great General. The only all-creation ghost that Suyu knew about was the Bloodbone Great Soldier. Senior brother Shanliang. How did you encounter him? Suyu asked in surprise. Gongsun Wuxia said, I'm not sure. Senior brother Shanliang and senior brother Tian Rinyao accepted an investigation mission together. In the end, brother Rinyao went missing, and brother Shanliang was severely injured. An investigation mission? Could it be to investigate the Bloodbone Great General? After Suyu discovered the Bloodbone Great General, he sent news of its existence back to the faction. Soon after, both Bai Shanliang and Tian Rinyao went out to carry out missions. It's a mission to investigate the ghost that escaped from the Elegant Spirit Mountain, Gongsun Wuxia said. She clenched her fists, her eyes filled with a cold light. Sure enough, Suyu's heart sank. The Bloodbone Great General had been a remnant soul in the past. Then he had occupied Manor Master Zhang's body. Then he had recovered his cultivation of a 9th-grade Almighty, until the last encounter, when he had recovered to the all-creation level. His strength had soared, and he had gradually recovered to his former peak state. Now, his exact strength was still unknown. If Bai Shanliang and Tian Rinyao had really encountered him, it would have been a disaster. Now that Tian Rinyao had gone missing, and Bai Shanliang was severely injured, the Demon Mountain was suddenly shrouded in a dark cloud. When did he come back? Suyu walked over and asked. 3 days ago, Gongsun Wuxia said. Suyu furrowed his brows. Why hasn't the faction healed him yet? With Bai Shanliang's status in the outside sanctum, there was no reason for them to abandon him. The great Palace Master Hua, and Palace Master Kong Chan all came to take a look, but they were also helpless, so they could only wait for Palace Master Mo to help them. However, Palace Master Mo has already left the faction, and we don't know when she will return, Gongsun Wuxia said. Even the great Palace Master was helpless? As far as she could remember, the great Palace Master was a 9th-grade Almighty expert. As he stared at Bai Shanliang's injuries, Suyu said, Senior brother Shanliang has 2 injuries. The first one is from the ghost palm, and the ghost energy in it is corroding his internal organs. When the medicinal power enters his body, it will be contaminated by the ghost energy, and it won't be able to heal him. The second one is quite strange. What's going on with the deadly poison in senior brother Shanliang's body? All the blood in his body is gone, and it's filled with the green poison. That's the trickiest part. For the first one, so you could use the Milky Way star sand to absorb the ghost energy. For the second one, so you didn't dare to act rashly, as the green poison was a little strange. Wuxia, did you tell him? Bing Wuxin looked at Suyu, then at Gongsun Wuxia. At this moment, Gongsun Wuxia's eyes were wide open, and she was sizing Suyu up like a curious baby. She shook her head and said, I swore 101 oaths, and it was definitely not me. Bing Wuxin's eyes flickered back and forth between Su Yu and Gongsun Wuxia. She snorted coldly, then stared at Su Yu and said, I don't care how you found out about Bai Shanliang's bloodline condition, but you must keep this matter a secret. Bloodline? Could it be that the green liquid was Bai Shanliang's blood? Bai Shanliang comes from a special family, and his bloodline is special. His blood naturally contains deadly poison, and the reason why he can refine such a violent poison is most likely because he poured his blood essence into it. That's why you often see his pale face. It's because he has lost too much blood. She then added, he has some special abilities, and once he encounters great danger, he can activate the power of his bloodline to scare off his enemies. However, the consequence is that the power of his bloodline will need some time to settle down and return to its normal state. This won't harm him, so you don't need to worry about it. She then added, the real problem is the ghost palm. Now, it's being suppressed by the Great Palace Master's vital energy, and it's preventing the ghost energy from spreading on a large scale. However, it won't last long, and if Palace Master Mo doesn't come back in time, his life will be in danger. Is that the case? Su Yu was surprised. Does the power of bloodline refer to the bloodline of an ancient spirit body? Is Bai Shanliang also an ancient spirit body? If that's the case, I have a way to try it and see whether I can cure Bai Shanliang's injuries. However, I don't want the process to be seen by others, so please leave for now, Su Yu said. Bing Wuxin's gaze was filled with doubt. Even the great palace master couldn't do anything about it. Yet Su Yu could? However, as she recalled that Su Yu was proficient in all kinds of mysterious techniques, she nodded doubtfully and said, Wuxia, let's go out. Bing Wuxin didn't look sideways, and she just brushed past Su Yu. However, when she brushed past him, she stopped abruptly, and her gaze became sharp. Wait. Chapter 9:61. You become her woman? Bing Wuxin's aura suddenly became fierce, and she stared at Su Yu as if he was her enemy. Su Yu was startled, and he touched his forehead subconsciously. Frowning, he asked, You mean Bing Wuxin? You've really seen her. Bing Wuxin was angry and resentful. She held her sword tightly, as if she was about to draw it and kill Su Yu. Gongsun Wuxia opened her eyes wide and stared at Su Yu in surprise. She asked in a low voice, Brother Yuxian, did you really sleep with that woman? You're so sorry to Sister Wuxin. Su Yu was still confused. I've only trained in her fairy artifact for 2 months. Is there a problem with that? Bing Wuxin was so angry that she laughed. You're still trying to hide it. Since Bing Wuxin occupied the fairy artifact to train, she has never allowed any man to step inside. Do you think I believe her if she kept you for 2 months? Moreover, her aura is still on your forehead, Bing Wuxin said. She's telling me that you're hers now, and I'm not allowed to touch you. Bing Wuxin never expected that Su Yu would be with Bing Wuxin after 2 months of isolation. Hearing this, Su Yu understood Bing Wuxin's intention. It seemed like a simple gesture, but it was to sow discord between him and Bing Wuxin. After thinking for a while, Su Yu said, Calm down first. Nothing happened between me and her, so don't fall into her trap. Bing Wuxin seemed to have gone berserk. Fine, then tell me why you were training in her fairy artifact. Don't tell me you lost your way there. Why? Of course, it was because he had reached an agreement with Bing Wuxin, and he was forced to do it. Of course, he couldn't tell her the reason. I can't tell you, but I have no reason to lie, Su Yu said. Bing Wuxin stared at Su Yu deeply, her eyes full of disappointment. She said coldly, I misjudged you. He didn't even tell her the reason, so how could she believe him? She thought of all the things Su Yu had done for her, especially when he went against Bing Wuxin's orders. Without stopping, Bing Wuxin strode away. Gongsun Wuxia stomped her feet and chased after her anxiously. When she passed by Su Yu, she lowered her voice and said, Brother Su Yu, you can't blame Sister Wuxin. She's too sensitive about Bing Wuxin. She'll calm down after some time. Su Yu said, Let her do as she pleases. Su Yu didn't like Bing Wuxin's temperament of killing people at the slightest provocation. He was rash in the face of trouble and couldn't take any provocation. Working together in the future would be extremely difficult. Shaking his head, Yu took advantage of the fact that there was no one else in the room to go over to Bai Shanliang and examine his body. After he ascertained that the ghost palm was only in front of him, Yu revolved the Milky Way star sand and started to get rid of the ghost energy contained in the ghost palm. Yu couldn't be more familiar with this process. An hour later, almost half of the ghost chi had been absorbed. The pitch-black ghost palm had obviously become much dimmer. Bai Shanliang's furrowed brows unconsciously relaxed. In the process of absorbing the ghost chi, the dark green poison mist in Bai Shanliang's body gradually retracted due to the weakening of the ghost chi. The poisonous mist on the surface of his body retracted back into his pores and entered his bloodline. However, traces of weak venom still remained outside his body, adhering to his clothes. After staring at it for a while, Yu secretly clicked his tongue. As he swept his gaze across it, his eyes felt a faint pain. Even looking at it might cause him to be attacked by the dark green poison mist. Intuition told him that even an 8th grade almighty would find it difficult to resist the power of the dark green poison mist. After thinking for a moment, Yu took out a jade bottle and collected all the remaining dark green poison mist, placing it into it. It would be troublesome if anyone accidentally touched it. 2 hours after the end of the month, the ghost palm on Bai Shanliang's chest had completely dimmed. All that was left was the hideous outline of the ghost palm. All the ghost energy that had corroded Bai Shanliang had been completely removed. All of a sudden, Bai Shanliang, who had fallen into a deep sleep, opened his eyes in a daze. He stared blankly at the ceiling, and his pupils gradually regained focus. He was shocked and was about to turn over and get up. "Senior brother Shanliang, you've returned to the faction." A gentle voice drifted into his ears. Upon hearing the familiar voice, Bai Shanliang looked over abruptly, and his nervous expression gradually eased. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "So, I've returned to the faction." His eyes were still filled with lingering fear. Yu said, "Senior brother Shanliang, can you explain in detail what happened? Why did you suddenly encounter the great soldier of Bloodbone?" That ghost hated Yu to the core, and if he didn't take precautions, it would be a disaster sooner or later. Upon hearing that, bitterness appeared at the corners of Bai Shanliang's mouth. It wasn't a sudden encounter, but an ambush. Tian Rinyao and I, along with a few middle-stage almighty from the inner sanctum, received orders from the faction to head to a pool to investigate information about a ghost that was left on the continent. According to the faction's orders, we were only in charge of gathering information and were not to alert the enemy. But we didn't expect to encounter it halfway before we arrived, and none of the elders survived. Tian Rinyao and I went our separate ways. I used the power of my bloodline to deter the ghost, and I took the opportunity to escape. I just don't know how Tian Rinyao is doing and whether he's been caught. Upon hearing that, Yu's brows furrowed into a line. It sounded fine, but upon closer inspection, there was a huge problem. Apart from himself, who else knew the route of their group? Why did the great soldier of Bloodbone just happen to encounter them and destroy them? Someone must have leaked the information along the way. "Senior brother Shanliang, rest well," Yu said. "Palace Mistress Imo will find a way to deal with that ghost." She had most likely left the faction because of this matter. Bai Shanliang heaved a sigh of relief. Since Palace Mistress Imo has come forward, there shouldn't be any problems. I hope Tian Rinyao can be saved. But I can't rest for the time being. The glittering jewel wonderland is about to descend, and I might have to leave in a few days, Bai Shanliang said. Yu asked doubtfully, "Where are we going? Are we waiting for the glittering jewel wonderland to descend?" According to Gongsun Wuxia, when the glittering jewel wonderland descended, all the outstanding youths of the continent would be summoned. Did they have to go to a special area? "Hey, junior brother Su, don't you know that the blessed and heavenly lands have limited quotas, and not everyone is qualified to represent the blessed and heavenly lands in the competition?" Bai Shanliang was taken aback. Yu was taken aback, and he asked in confusion, "Can't I get the faction's recommendation to enter the glittering jewel wonderland with 4 million merit points?" Bai Shanliang coughed, then explained patiently, "Junior brother, it seems like you still don't understand. For million merit points is just the Red Blood Palace's condition. There's another condition, and only those whose abilities are among the top 100 of the blessed and heavenly lands are qualified to enter the glittering Jewel Wonderland. The former condition is a test of the disciples' loyalty, and only those who have stayed in the Red Blood Palace for a long time can get such a large number of merit points. Otherwise, a random genius of unknown origin can easily occupy the quota of the other disciples of the Red Blood Palace. Chapter 962. Before the arrival of the glittering Jewel Wonderland, the 18 blessed and heavenly lands will hold a meeting of geniuses called the Fengyun Genius Assembly. All the disciples of the factions in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands can participate. As long as they rank among the top 100 in the assembly, they will be qualified. Generally speaking, the top 100 were mostly occupied by the Red Blood Palace and the Purple Cloud Palace. The outstanding geniuses of the 16 great factions have been plundered by the 2 great factions through internal recruitment. How could they compete with the 2 super factions in such an official competition? It was even more difficult for the other factions to cultivate outstanding geniuses. However, Suyu was not careless. He had seen special places like the Elegant Spirit Mountain and Tianya City, so he had no doubt that there were a large number of outstanding youths there. It was not easy to rank among the top 100 in the entire 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Suyu might not be able to rank among the top 100 without exposing his true identity. "Thank you for your advice, senior brother," Suyu said. Bai Shanliang sighed and said, "I should be the one thanking you." Although he was unconscious, Bai Shanliang could still vaguely sense who had saved him. "Senior brother, you're too polite. You can rest for now. I'll report to the faction. I believe they have many questions for you," Suyu said. After leaving the courtyard, Bing Wuxin was nowhere to be found. Only Gongsun Wuxia was pacing back and forth in the courtyard with her light brows furrowed. Upon hearing Suyu's footsteps, Gongsun Wuxia said immediately, "You've finally come out. How is Brother Shanliang?" "He's fine now. Where's Wuxin? Did she leave in anger?" Suyu frowned slightly. Did she lose her cool and go to Bing Wuxin to settle the score? With Bing Wuxin's temper, it was possible. From Suyu's observation of Bing Wuxin was most likely not a match for her, especially that strange bloodline power and the ancient seal spirit body. Without any special countermeasures, Bing Wuxin would surely lose. "Don't worry. Although Sister Wuxin is a little brainless with small breasts, she hasn't lost her mind yet," Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile. Suyu glanced at her flat chest, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. Small breasts required courage too. Sensing Suyu's ambiguous gaze, Gongsun Wuxia's small face flushed, and she glared at Suyu fiercely. "I can feel the damage to my personality." Suyu smiled and said, "You should go and take a look at Bai Shanliang. I'll go back and make some preparations." There were many experts in the Fengyun Genius Assembly, and they could not be underestimated. "Wait." All of a sudden, Gongsun Wuxia took out a space ring and said, "Fairy Ling sent someone to deliver this to me a few days ago. It's the second item that I've given you, the vital energy of 505th grade Almighty." Suyu's eyes lit up, and he grabbed it. As he probed it with his soul, he discovered that it was a small water droplet that was packed with rubber. The water droplets were wrapped in a powerful spiritual energy. They weren't considered top-notch, but they were at the level of the 5th grade Almighty. As long as he crushed the water droplet, the Jinshi contained within would immediately leak out. Even a 9th grade Almighty couldn't achieve such a massive amount of vital energy. This spiritual energy was the key to activating the glittering Jewel Mortal Fairy's divine crystal. Suyu was eager to know what kind of memories the glittering Jewel Mortal Fairy contained in these divine crystals. Now that he had obtained the vital energy that he had been looking forward to, Suyu took out the corresponding amount of heartbroken zither grass and said, "These are the herbs that I promised you. Please pass them to Fairy Ling," Gongsun Wuxia said with a smile. "Why don't you pass them to me personally? My aunt misses you very much. After all, my aunt and I used to be your slaves." "Miss me? You want to kill me, don't you?" Suyu shook his head lightly, ignoring the giggling Gongsun Wuxia, and returned to his courtyard. After closing the doors and windows, Suyu took out the 5 elements divine prison. Staring at the 5 elements divine prison, Suyu frowned deeply. 2 months, at a time acceleration of 500 times, was equivalent to 90 years. However, his comprehension of the demon clan's words was barely satisfactory. It took him 90 years to barely comprehend the 99th word. The further he progressed, the more difficult it was to comprehend the 9 words. It was more difficult than all the previous levels combined. The 91st word took him 3 years. The 92nd word took him 6 years. The 93rd word took him 9 years. The last 99th word took Suyu dozens of years to comprehend. In the ordinary world, this would be unimaginable. Even if it was a fairy-level cultivation technique, dozens of years of comprehension would make great progress. However, this time was only enough to successfully comprehend 1 word. Moreover, Suyu's soul was stronger than that of ordinary people, and his body had been tempered by the divine 9-dragon cauldron's mysterious liquid all year round. So his comprehension was not bad. The last 100th word took Suyu an unimaginable amount of time. For almost 50 years, he wandered in the mood of the demon clan's words millions of times, but he still could not reach a higher level. His comprehension of the 5 elements had reached a bottleneck. It seemed that something was missing, but he did not know what it was. Now that he was about to set off, Suyu was not in the mood to continue wasting time here. With a thought, Suyu took out the purple token. It was Suyu's Tinya token. The real dragon spirit veins should have been collected, right? Suyu murmured. He had given the silver-masked man 30 million crystals, but there had been no news until now. It should be soon. Once it was in his hands, he could ask for the help of the evil god to continue cultivating the first dragon body and reach the advanced state. At that time, his physical strength would not be as dispensable as it was now. Suddenly, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. There was some kind of summoning voice deep in his heart. Glancing at the 9 jade spiritual pearl on his arm, Suyu's eyes shone with excitement. He immediately condensed a wisp of his soul and entered the space of the 9 jade spiritual pearl. The moment he appeared in the space, a shocking wave of scorching heat assaulted him. The entire space of the 9 jade spiritual pearl was slightly fluctuating due to the heat. Suyu stood in front of a huge purple sun that looked like a blazing sun. The purple sun was filled with extreme flames that could destroy the world. Even an old monster who had just entered the All Creations level might not be able to withstand such flames. Within the purple sun, there was a petite and adorable little purple Qilin. It was surrounded by 3 purple flames, and it was continuously adding strange seals to the purple sun. The seals were very special and did not seem to be made by a human. Before long, the little Qilin stopped adding the seals. It opened its mouth and sucked in all directions. The purple flames that filled the sky were all sucked back into the little Qilin stomach, leaving not a trace behind. The 3 streaks of purple flames revealed their true appearance. 3 long swords that were 3 feet long and shining with silver light were suspended in the air. The blades of the swords were as thin as a cicada's wings, emitting a faint chill. It was as if they could even destroy souls with a single strike. Traces of electric currents flowed on the bodies of the swords, which were of various colors. At the center of the swords, the pattern of a Kylan's head could be vaguely seen. It was as if some crafting master had inscribed his name on the artifact, representing the person who had made the artifact. When the rolling heat dissipated, Suyu moved closer and stared at the long silver swords, his heart filled with anticipation. Chapter 963. The previous 3 small golden swords had been made by Lu Chuyi using the powder of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo and some other materials. Moreover, her heavenly orchid silver bamboo was a very young bamboo, and its whole body was golden. Hence, after it was refined, it was only a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact. However, the materials provided by Suyu were top-notch heavenly orchid silver bamboos that were more than 1,000 years old. They were silver in color and possessed a weak lightning magical ability. Even without the help of a crafting master, just the indestructible materials alone were enough to make a top-grade spiritual artifact. coupled with the small Kylan's mysterious flames and its mysterious crafting experience. Its grade was definitely higher than a top-grade spiritual artifact. The small Kylan circled around in the air, its eyes filled with exhaustion as it flew listlessly to Su Yu's shoulder. The pink scales of the past had lost their luster and became dull and dull. "Thank you for your hard work." Su Yu rubbed its head. Through the contract between them, he could clearly feel that the small Kylan was extremely weak. Crafting 3 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords for half a year had exhausted its mental power. "I'm fine. I just need to sleep for a while," the small Kylan said. This was the second time it had mentioned that it wanted to sleep. The voice in its mind wanted to impart something new to it. Su Yu asked softly, "How long will this sleep last?" The small Kylan thought for a moment before replying, "I don't know. But the desire to sleep is very strong, so it won't be short. It could be as short as several years, or as long as there is no time limit." If there was no time limit, the small Kylan might return to its original state of being sealed in a skeleton, and it might not wake up even after hundreds or thousands of years. Looking at Su Yu, the small Kylan hesitated for a moment before saying, "Master, if you don't want me to sleep, I can endure it. After a while, the desire to sleep will subside." Su Yu furrowed his brows, but did not say anything. This sleep was a good fortune for the small Kylan, so he had no reason to stop it. "I will wait for you to wake up," Su Yu said briefly. Hearing this, the small Kylan looked grateful. Su Yu had expressed his support for it with just a few words. The small Kylan rubbed Su Yu's head affectionately. Its eyes were filled with exhaustion, as if it was going to sleep soon. It struggled to stand up, then extended its 2 little hooves and pointed at the silver light floating in the air. The 3 shining silver swords flew down at the same time, hovering 30 feet in front of Su Yu. Even though they were so far apart, Su Yu could sense the shocking spiritual pressure hidden within the sword. His body trembled slightly as he felt a chill run down his spine. The doppelganger he had created with a wisp of his soul power flickered. Under this spiritual pressure, it actually showed signs of being destroyed. Not to mention using his soul force to envelop the 3 long swords. Just getting within 30 feet of them was enough to destroy his soul force. What grade of treasure is this? Su Yu's eyes were filled with excitement. He had seen many high-grade spiritual weapons and even semi-manufactured immortal weapons. However, there was no semi-manufactured immortal artifact or high-grade spiritual artifact that could shake his soul energy with just its spiritual pressure. The answer was obvious. An immortal artifact. The little Kylan blinked its gemstone eyes, as if it was narrating a matter of course. A 1,000-year-old heavenly orchid silver bamboo. This kind of nature-defying material, refining an immortal tool, is nothing more than common. Unfortunately, my technique is not good enough. I can only forge it into a low-grade immortal artifact. So he was pleasantly surprised. A immortal artifact, even a low-grade one, would suffice. Ever since he had started cultivating, he had countless treasures, but none of his offensive treasures had surpassed the level of an immortal artifact. The 3 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords of the immortal artifact level were the most powerful offensive treasures that Su Yu had ever obtained. Moreover, he had obtained 3 of them. The power of the 3 swords combined with the 9 suns cosmos sword formation would be extraordinary. At that moment, Su Yu even had the urge to take the initiative to fight an all-creations old monster. What kind of power could the combination of the immortal artifact and the 9 suns cosmos sword formation achieve? The spiritual pressure contained in the 3 swords is too shocking. Apart from Master's 9 Jade Spiritual Pearl, I'm afraid there are not many storage spaces that can accommodate them. So, Master, it's best if you carry them on your back, the little Kylan said. As it spoke, it opened its mouth and spat out a large amount of flames. Within the flames, there were 3 silver-white scabbards. The 3 scabbards were made from the roots of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. They nurtured the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, so they can naturally accommodate the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. They are the best material for the scabbards. As the 3 scabbards appeared, the 3 immortal artifact long swords flew back into the scabbards on their own as if they had sensed something. All of a sudden, the shocking spiritual pressure dissipated, and what was left were 3 seemingly exquisite silver swords. In this way, as long as the swords are not unsheathed, no one will be able to recognize that there is an immortal artifact hidden within the swords, the little Kylan said. It had considered everything thoroughly. Suyu's face lit up with joy as he wrapped it around him. Suddenly, Suyu noticed that there were still some remnants of the flames burning in the sky, and he could vaguely see something within them. The main stem of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo has been refined by 30%, and there is still 70% left. When I wake up, I will continue refining it for you, the little Kylan said. A silver light flashed in the sky, and a large mass of silver liquid enveloped in purple flames fell down and was swallowed by the little Kylan. Only by wrapping it in purple flames for a long time could the heavenly orchid silver bamboo be maintained in its liquid state. Otherwise, it would return to its solid state once it cooled down. However, it still required a great deal of effort to melt it. I will keep the main stem for you. These are the leaves of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, the little Kylan said. Another large mass of purple light flew down. It was countless drops of purple flames the size of water droplets, and within each drop was a drop of silver liquid. Inside each drop is the juice of a leaf. In terms of hardness, it is not as good as the main stem, so is not suitable for refining swords. Master, if there is anything you want to refine, I can make it easily, the little Kylan said. Suyu's eyes lit up as he looked at the juice of the silver leaf. There are 2 things. One is to customize a mask suitable for me, and the other is to see if you can refine it into 4 spherical objects, Suyu said. The former was to conceal one's appearance to prevent being recognized at the Fengyan Great Assembly. The latter was for the meteor light stream Great Formation, which could be used in conjunction with 9 round pearls. The 4 formation pearls from the Dry Cloud 5 elemental formation had been destroyed when Jinmu was trapped and killed. The remaining materials at present were perfect for refining formation pearls. Upon hearing this, the little Kylan nodded. Normal treasures require time and energy to continuously refine. But for masks and spherical objects, it is very easy. There is no need to refine them. You can solidify them with ready-made liquids. Suyu was delighted. Next, the little Kylan gestured with its 2 hooves in the air. Drops of purple flames containing the silver liquid gathered quickly, forming a liquid ball the size of a palm. This was the liquid obtained by melting all the bamboo leaves. Under the little Kylan's control, the liquid was divided into 9 parts. One of them was the size of a thumb, and as the purple flames changed, it spread out continuously, forming a thin layer. Holes of suitable sizes were cut out for the eyes and nostrils, and the spread area was just about the size of Suyu's face. Then, the little Kylan kept withdrawing the purple flames, and the spread silver liquid began to cool down, gradually solidifying. When the flames were completely restrained, the thin layer of liquid finally solidified after an hour of natural cooling. Suyu raised his hand and drew it into his palm. A mask as thin as a cicada's wing, emitting a gentle feeling, lay quietly on Suyu's palm. It was not exquisite, but it was very suitable. Moreover, with the hardness of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, external forces could not break the mask. Putting it on the little Kylan's head, Suyu tried to explore it with his soul eyes, but he was surprised to find that what he saw was nothingness. It was as if there was a layer of space power isolating it from his vision. A similar situation had happened to Jinmu before. His soul was hidden in a sealed space within his body, so it could not be detected. The heavenly orchid silver bamboo was born with space attributes, and after being refined into a mask, it also had the effect of isolating space. Even the transparent eye could not see through it, so perhaps even the all-creation old monsters could not see through the mask. To Suyu, this was the best thing that could happen to him. Seeing that its master was so happy, the little Kylan worked hard and continued to refine the other 8 portions of liquid. Due to the limited amount of liquid, these materials could only be refined into a hollow state. The round balls, which seemed to be 5 feet in size, actually only had a thin layer of skin. However, with the hardness of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, even a thin layer of skin could not break it. After 2 hours, the 8 hollow, shining silver balls were finally refined successfully. Because the heavenly orchid silver bamboo was made of wood, its texture was very light. It looked huge, but when it landed on Suyu's palm, it was as light as a feather. This made it easier to set up the meteor light stream formation. The little Kylan, who was already drowsy, could not hold on any longer after refining the last ball. It fell into Suyu's arms, closed its eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. Suyu lovingly placed it in the cottage next to the nursery and let it sleep peacefully. Suyu was very grateful as he stroked its head. Ever since the little Kylan had followed him, it had never asked for any benefits. Instead, it had helped Suyu a lot. Even his most important magical treasures had been refined by the little Kylan. Little guy, I hope that you can rely on me one day. Otherwise, how can I repay you? Suyu muttered to himself with a smile. After leaving the cottage, Suyu saw Shanggu, who was quietly cultivating at the foot of the valley. Sensing Suyu's gaze, Shanggu opened her eyes. Her left eye was surging with ghost energy, while her right eye was filled with a sacred Buddhist light. Two completely opposite auras flashed by at the same time. Master, Shanggu stood up and greeted. Suyu nodded. How's the refining of the ghost prison token going? Shanggu looked ashamed. I'm too stupid. I'll let you down. I've only refined the 10,000th ghost prison token. I've comprehended most of the remaining one, but I've yet to make a breakthrough. It doesn't matter. You can't be too hasty when it comes to comprehension. You can put it aside for now and focus on your cultivation. So you thought for a moment and took out a golden dust. It contained 10% of the mortal fairy's strength of the central prefecture's king. Suyu had only absorbed a tiny bit of it, and he had made a breakthrough from the 6th grade fairy to the 9th grade fairy. Moreover, the difficulty of breaking through to the 9th grade fairy was far greater than that of ordinary people. If it were an ordinary person, that tiny bit of energy would have made a breakthrough to the Almighty. He lent it to Shanggu temporarily, so he wasn't afraid that she would absorb all the energy in it. As to what level she could make a breakthrough to, it would depend on her own luck. Shanggu was stunned. She stared at the dust for a moment and cried out involuntarily, "Pure essence of the mortal fairy! Young master, where did you get this?" Mortal fairies, even in the world of ghosts and souls, were giants whose names shook the world. She hadn't seen Suyu for a long time, but he could even obtain the essence of a mortal fairy. To Shang Ji's knowledge, unless the mortal fairy was willing to split the essence, it was almost impossible for an outsider to obtain it. What shocked Shanggu even more was that Suyu was willing to let her absorb the essence. Take it. Your current cultivation is too low to be of much help to me. I'll lend this dust to you for the time being. How much you can absorb is entirely up to you, Suyu said. With Suyu's current strength, Shangji's cultivation would hardly be of any use. If she worked hard enough, this speck of dust would make Shanggu undergo a complete transformation. Shanggu was extremely excited. Her two big eyes were as bright as two small suns. Young master, Shanggu can never repay your great kindness. Shanggu was overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude. She had been taken captive by Suyu in the past, and it had been a great humiliation. She felt that she had been subdued by a junior who was inferior to her. But how long had it been? Now she had to look up to the junior of the past. She had even received a great gift from him. Shanggu couldn't help but sigh at the reversal of their positions. All right, train with peace of mind. If nothing goes wrong, I'll need your help soon, Suyu said. Shangji's face was full of confidence. She held the dust tightly and said, "Don't worry, young master. With this dust, Shanggu has a way to improve my cultivation by leaps and bounds in a short period of time." Suyu was surprised. He didn't really expect Shangji's cultivation to improve tremendously in a short period of time. She was currently only a 3rd grade fairy. Even if she had a large amount of mortal fairy essence, it didn't mean that she could improve her cultivation without any hindrance. If she absorbed too much of this essence, her body wouldn't be able to absorb it in a short period of time. Moreover, Her cultivation needed to be stabilized. Continuous breakthroughs in one go would only bring more harm than good. Otherwise, so you would have already begun trying to break through to the Almighty with the help of the mortal fairy's strength. Hee. Shang-Ji's constitution is a little special. The difficulties that ordinary living creatures face in their cultivation may not be difficult for me, Shang-Gu said with a mischievous smile. Suyu raised his eyebrows. Special constitution? Was it the kind that could accommodate both ghost energy and Buddhist energy at the same time? It's good that you know what you're doing. Suyu wanted to ask in detail, but he frowned and immediately withdrew his soul energy, returning to his body. Dong! The distant sound of a bell drifted into his ears. It seemed to come from the endless horizon, reverberating in the 9 heavens and lingering for a long time. This was the assembly order of the inner sanctum, and it was issued by Emmo Tanshin herself. She had returned to the faction. Could it be that she was preparing to set off to select the qualifications to enter the glittering jewel wonderland? Suyu grasped the 3 silvery white swords in front of him and stood up slowly. He tried to take out a space ring and put the 3 swords into it. In the end, the space ring exploded before he could put the 3 swords in. After a few consecutive attempts, Suyu finally confirmed that even with the scabbard, no ordinary space could accommodate the heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords. The only way was to carry them with him, as the little Kylan had said. In desperation, Suyu found a sword box and carried it on his back. The 3 silver swords were shining brightly. Together with his sage-like, old appearance, he had the charm of a sword fairy.